The Earth system is nonlinear and can sometimes be hard to predict, but the general circulation models and other models we use are pretty good, but not perfect. Mostly what I've seen are predictions of hotter and drier weather for Colorado, especially on the Front Range. Obviously, there will be lots of swings up and down through time. Some years wetter, some years drier. If you ask me, the trend will be to hotter and drier weather. What we are experiencing this spring is our likely future. On a personal note, my wife and I continue to discuss if and when we should leave the state just for quality of life. We're looking for somewhere that will likely be wet, not quite as hot, and where we can avoid wildfire smoke. Insurance will also be much more expensive in Colorado based on what's likely to come via climate change. And that's a quote from an anonymous client of ours who also happens to be an expert in climate change. We've been chatting, and I asked him what he thought Boulder's weather is going to look like in the future based on all the models he's seen, and that was his response. And hotter and drier is likely what we're seeing this spring is probably our future, with some variability, right, for moisture and for heat.
Yeah, I kind of imagine it'd be like a linear progression, but it would be kind of, like a swing in either direction with kind of a trend towards hotter and drier.
Yeah, more variability, but the long-term trend, hotter and drier. And with that, welcome to House Einstein Podcast 113. I'm Osman Parvez, and with me is Hamish Crabb, and we thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, it's good to be back yet again. And top of mind, I think, for everyone locally is water and kind of resilience. I know we're seeing a lot of, without jumping in to the closing table topic, we're seeing posts about all the different municipalities in the Denver metro area, and I think Erie led the charge, and so now it's just this cascade of other municipalities being like, shoot, we've got to make a statement too. So yeah, that's it's top of mind, and I appreciate that client quite a bit. I also don't think they're being paid to be an alarmist or anything as well.
They are definitely not paid to be alarmists. They love this community. Yeah. I think that their vision to needing to move somewhere else in the future is not from a place of disliking Boulder. Is just from a place of visible and obvious changes and likely what the long-term future looks like. And before we go there, that is our closing table topic. We're going to talk about water restrictions and the fire season. But before we jump into our full table of contents, let me just give you a couple of reminders. This is the House Einstein podcast, which is sponsored by the House Einstein brokerage. The brokerage's mission is to help you make a smarter real estate decision. The podcast is entertainment. If you are a client of the brokerage, please reach out to us if you are considering any major real estate decisions. That's what we're here for. We are more than happy to advise you. And you can find us at houseeinstein.com. If you're a listener and not a client, please do not make any decisions based on anything you hear in this podcast. Any decisions, financial, real estate, romantic, whether or not
especially romantic,
whether or not to have lunch today, your nutrition plan, your fitness goals, none of that should come from the House Einstein podcast. We're not liable. Don't blame us if you screw that up. And we're going to skip bios. I think people know who we are. But that's the disclaimer. And if you'd like to learn more, again, we're always available at houseeinstein.com. And that's also where you can sign up for our newsletter. And you'll see lots of our other content hosted there. So be sure to check that out. And now let's jump into our bios too. I feel like bios at this point, after 112 podcasts, like I kind of feel like, do I need to mention them? We work in real estate. We help buyers and sellers directly.
We do.
I've been doing this for over 20 years. Hamish has been doing this for about 3.5 years.
If we wanted to milk it, I could go probably 6 years, considering my internship in high school. But
true,
4 years, I think, is more realistic. Yeah.
But you also see more deals than the typical agent sees in 3 or 4 years. So your quality is not based on longevity. The average agent your experience and your professionalism is not based on longevity in this industry, because there are agents that do one deal a year, and there are many agents that do 0 deals a year. So there's so many people that don't know what they're doing in this industry. It's quite shocking. So I really think that you should never undersell your experience, given that you support 3 of us here at the brokerage.
I'll take it. So anyway, no more bios, I guess.
Okay,
and
so
the sponsor spot does have like a little intro, I guess, about House Einstein too. So right before the closing table, I checked the sponsor spot in, and the listeners know. So
I haven't listened to it in a long time. Maybe I should. Yeah, let's listen to it. But maybe for next time, let me walk the listeners through our table of contents. So we're going to talk about water restrictions and the fire season. We're going to cover a lot. We're going to talk about where water comes from that serves the city of Boulder, and whether long-term growth could be sustained by our existing water resources or not. We're also going to talk about fires, insurability, sprinkler systems, and then we're going to talk about water rights, because it's something that most agents often ignore when it comes to valuation, and when it comes to people that have water rights, they would like you to believe that they're often worth a lot more than they really are. Sometimes those water rights are extremely inflated. The value is extremely inflated by the stock or ditch holding companies, and it can be really tricky to understand water rights. And so we're going to cover that in some detail, giving you at least some place to start if you are buying or selling property that has water rights. And then we'll wrap up that segment and move on to Tales from the Trenches. In this particular case, we're going to talk about a particular experience that happened with a listing agent as we tried to negotiate an inspection process. This is not a current deal. If you're listening to this, anybody that is involved with a current deal, this is a deal from a couple of years ago, but it's actually a very important one because it illustrates some of the challenges we face as agents in negotiating with counterparties. And I think it's a pretty funny story.
It's a good one.
It caught me really off guard, and I think you'll enjoy that. So that's our tale from the trench. And then market conditions. We're going to focus in on the condo market. As most people listening to this know, we typically focus our attention on single-family houses, but we also represent buyers and sellers of condos. In fact, we currently have 2 condos listed. And understanding what's happening in that market is vital if you're thinking about buying or selling. And if you're a CU parent, you might be looking at the condo market and thinking now's a good time to jump in before your child signs up with a slumlord for the next year. You have time to lock down something, particularly given where inventory is. So we'll go into those details. And then our sales of the week, we are covering 5 properties. I did not open up that cart, Hamish, so I'm going to open it up right now.
I'll send you the link if you need.
Nope, I think I got it. And
I picked one this time, listeners, so we'll see how it compares.
I think you picked a good one. So we're going to talk about 440 Christmas Tree Drive. We'll talk about 819 Gapter Road. That was the one Hamish chose. We'll talk about 2917 13th Street. That's in Washington Village. And we'll talk about 2525 Balsam Drive. That's another one of those properties that are sitting on that Alpine Balsam Peninsula. And that's what I prefer to call it, because there are a couple of different subdivisions there, and everyone knows what I'm talking about when I talk about the Alpine Balsam Panorama Peninsula. And then our last one will be 80 South 33rd Street. Quite a jump in value there, down to an entry-level ranch in Martin Acres on one of the quietest streets in the acres. And we'll talk about why that property sold for $20,000 over list in what was likely a bidding war. Oh. And that will be our 5 sales of the week, chosen to illustrate locations and price ranges and unique deals, or just because we think the house is cool. And then shameless self-promotion, that's our little carve-out. Not a carve-out, sorry, that's another segment. The shameless self-promotion segment is where we talk about one of our buyers or sellers and what they're up to, what they might be hunting for. And if you're a listener, maybe you have a match, and if so, please reach out to us. And then we've got our news stories. We're going to touch on, it's kind of hard to ignore what's going on in the world right now. So we're going to share some feels and maybe some predictions from the amateur armchair of House Einstein about where we're going with this week 4 of the Iran war. Artemis launched last night, which is very cool. We can talk about that briefly, and then we're going to really get into real estate. But Artemis does have a real estate angle, by the way, and of course, so does the Iran war.
That's true.
But Louisville is about to buy a $13 million building, and I'd love to contrast that with how Boulder approaches buying expensive buildings, or at least has in the past. And then we've got carve-outs. Hamish, you're going to be talking about roommates. I'm going to be talking about ankle rehab and the mindset for ankle rehab. And then that should be it for this week's podcast. That's our table of contents.
Should be a good one, and I'll say happy April, everyone. Yeah. April 2nd as of recording. And
happy April back.
Yeah.
We're in April. It's
that's
shocking.
that silence was everybody saying it back. Classroom setting, you know?
That's right. That's right. This podcast is sponsored by House Einstein. We serve buyers and sellers in Colorado, focusing on Boulder, Denver, and several mountain resort towns, including Breckenridge and Winter Park. Our mission is simple: help you make a smarter real estate decision. You can learn more at houseeinstein.com or our YouTube channel, where you'll find videos on neighborhoods, specific listings, and much, much more.
Okay. Well, it's been a bit dry.
It's been a bit dry. And water is on pretty much everyone's mind. Some people have already started irrigating their front yards and their plants, even though city officials would prefer you not do that right away. And I guess what's important for buyers and sellers in the city of Boulder to understand is, where does our water come from? And 2/3 of that water is coming directly from Barker Reservoir and Silver Lake, and then flows down North Boulder Creek and Middle Boulder Creek. It converges right around where the Boulder Waterfall is, which has not been open, I think, for several years. And then it flows down the rest of the way through Boulder Creek, and it stops at the Patasso water treatment plant, where it's processed for distribution for drinking water. And that's 2/3. 1/3 is coming from the big Thompson and Windy Gap projects, operated by Northern Water, and that water flows through a series of canals. It goes through Carter Lake and ends up at Boulder Reservoir, and that's the terminal storage for water on the east side of town. And there's, of course, a whole bunch of irrigation ditches that the city owns shares in, that they use to move water around for farmers and that sort of thing, but that doesn't really impact our drinking water.
It's more like the we're focusing kind of on municipality. I guess as a fun aside, Boulder makes a little bit of hydroelectric off of some of this water as it flows down the mountain, which I thought was interesting.
It does.
A little bit.
It does. It says it makes a little power. Why not? Yeah. Sure. I'm not sure if that ever is. I don't know much about that power plant. I've never paid any attention to it. But it's interesting. I guess, the curious person in me would want to know, how much did it cost, and have we reached payback? And how are we utilizing that power resource now? How is that benefiting the citizens?
They just have one light bulb, and that's
right.
It's all just to keep a light bulb on.
There's a dim light bulb burning up there at Patasso. But recently, and this is on March 16th, the Director of Utilities, Joe Taducci, and Joe, I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing your name incorrectly, reported that the city's reservoir storage is at a healthy level for this time of year, and we will likely not reach drought stage under the city's drought formula. But staff are preparing conservation messaging anyway, because we need to start thinking about a multi-year drought rather than spending our reserves in one season. And yes, Erie and Lafayette have already advised residents to stop using sprinklers. I guess there's a new outdoor landscaping code that's supposed to take effect from May 1st through September 30th, and that says watering must occur before 10 or after 6 to reduce evaporative losses. Back when I moved, I moved here twice, right? I moved here in 2000, and then I moved away, and then I moved back in 2005. But in between that, the Boulder was in a drought, and I think that's the last time we've been in a serious drought. And during that time period, we put in place all sorts of conservation efforts, which were largely successful. Our water consumption per person really shrunk. And of course, this is that point where I'm sure you're about to say, it's not the people that are the problem. It's the animals, and it's the agriculture that is using most of our water. But
and people love to point at the golf courses too.
And people love to point at the golf courses. Absolutely. Yeah. So that's the big picture of where does our water come from, And even though it's been super dry and hot, and our snowpack is literally at record low levels, if there's anything left of the snowpack, we're actually in good shape in the city of Boulder because of how old our water resources are and how well managed they have been in the past. And I have a friend who works for the city of Boulder, and this is about a decade ago. He told me that we are really in excellent shape because of how much storage we have and the age of our water rights. The city of Boulder is not in trouble, but other locations like Erie and Lafayette do not have as old water rights or as well established water, right? And so they are more at risk, and that's also why they're moving faster to put in place drought restrictions. Okay, that's the big picture. And online in many places, there's a debate going on over the Boulder Valley Comp Plan. And one of those debates, one element of that debate is whether we have enough water to support growth in the city of Boulder. And this is not my area of expertise, but I did ask AI to give me an intelligent evaluation. And, I will share the table here, Hamish, with you.
To post up?
Yeah, so maybe you want to post it up. It's my synthesis, a reasonable carrying capacity range. And what's funny, whenever I see stuff like this and I share it with an expert, their response is usually, that analysis is so wrong. But boy, it's for somebody who's not an expert in these things, it sure passes the sniff test, And I'm not sure what else to say.
Yeah.
Like, I asked AI to help with evaluating weight distributing hitches, and it came up with what sounded like a really intelligent argument. And I sent it to a friend of mine who is a past client and owns a trailer and uses the weight distributing hitch, and he's an engineer. And frankly, he just puked all over it. He laughed and puked all over AI's analysis, and I was really shocked. Because it passed the sniff test. And so this is the danger of AI, is sometimes it gives you information that to a reasonable mind looks intelligent and well considered, but actually is not a good analysis at all to somebody who actually is an expert in this field. So if you happen to be an expert in this field, please, would love a comment. Now's a great time to make it. Chime in. But the estimates say that in an aggressive drought, this is the 2002 level repeat, the city of Boulder could handle 100,000 to 110,000 people with mandatory restrictions, which is our existing population. But under current conservation levels and normal hydrology, AI, this is Claude, is saying we could have a population of 155,000. And under the treatment plant summer ceiling, like what can the treatment plant handle, we can handle 170,000 to 180,000. So before conservation measures were put in place, this is in 2002, we could support 120 to 135,000. But under existing conservation measures, including some moderate cuts from the Big Thompson Windy Gap, we would support 130 to 140,000 people. So currently, I don't know if you know this, listeners, but we're roughly at about 108 to 110,000 people, somewhere in there. So this suggests that under current conservation, with moderate cuts, 130 to 140,000 people. So that's another 20 to 30,000 more people based on water resources alone and ignoring everything else like transportation and so forth. So I know I wanted to answer that, at least provide the AI's perspective on that, because it's been brought up repeatedly. You see this in the comments that Boulder should not expand because we just don't have the water resources. I don't know if it's true or not that we do. This is one of those things where my gut says we don't have the water, but it appears we might have the water.
I mean, ideally you want like a little bit of overhead, I'd imagine. It's got me thinking about, and I don't know this one too in depth, but like the B1M and a few other kind of larger YouTubes just did videos on it. The Gross Reservoir expansion. And Denver has been fighting, I think, like for a decade now, just to raise the dam to have more capacity for the growing population. So, I mean, that looks to be a possible future, right, of what Boulder's going to be looking at if it continues to grow.
What do you
You know,
mean?
if you have to
What do you
expand
mean?
like Barker, or figure out how you can get
that they
more
could
water
invest
from.
in deepening Barker res. I mean, that's
If they've got to do something like that, right?
Right. Sure.
To make up for it. Yeah.
I mean, that's a very valid point, that we could invest in more reservoir capacity. But of course, if we're not getting the snowpack to fill the reservoir, right, having a bigger storage tank doesn't help us if we can't fill the tank.
Without a doubt. And not to mention, like, with the legal challenges that Denver faced, I think it's not a great omen for how easy it would be for Boulder to just say, yeah, we're going to deepen Barker Reservoir too, especially considering there's houses along that one. Yeah.
I mean, I would imagine they would invest in Silver Lake. Because it's less visible. There's no houses to worry about. It would be easier, or fewer houses. I got to go look at the outline of the lake. But I think the entire lake is like fenced in, and I don't think I've ever been there. I don't. I mean, you can get there by. It's not far from Rainbow Lake. Okay, so that is the water perspective on growth, or the growth perspective on our water resources, and what I think is important for people to understand is it's not just, of course, about water. As our friend and client pointed out, there's air quality and insurance costs related to wildfires that also can really impact livability for our community. So should you be thinking about a mountain home? And if you are thinking about a mountain home, are you prepared for the increasing insurance costs? And are you choosing a home based on defensibility? I can tell you these homes built in the 70s are far less mitigated just inherently by their design than a much newer home that might have a water sprinkler system, might have a metal roof, might have combustion resistant materials as siding. I mean, the design process, I think today, is much more concerned with fire mitigation than from the 70s or older.
I mean, and the aesthetic too, right? Like, everybody, I think, wanted that like log cabin built of the earth kind of aesthetic, and like that is just tinder, and nowadays it's all hardening. And
this is before your time, but there were these shows in the 70s and 80s like Swiss Family Robinson, and it was like all about Colorado and Western living and of course it was log cabin homes had that aesthetic, and
the banjo in the background.
Right, the banjo in the background.
But no, exactly. So, I mean, I'm getting ads for them on Facebook now of like exterior home sprinklers. That kind of, the idea is they just like soak the house, and it gets wet enough to the point where, if a fire sweeps through, in theory, you could have some defensibility with it. And I think I don't know if it's like out there or not. In practice, it kind of makes sense. But some of these fires are so hot, they scorch the earth to the point where like nothing's going to grow for like 5-10 years, right?
Or
then
longer.
Again, or longer. Then again, you've heard of the stories of the folks that did just turn on their like garden sprinklers, and they're the only home standing right in the neighborhood. So
these systems exist. You need not just you need storage of your own water, right? You might need 1,000 or 2,000 gallons of water sitting in cisterns, either in your crawl space or somewhere near your house. And then you need a power system to power it, because if the power is cut, you don't have power to run pumps. You might have a propane and a propane generator, but one of the first things fire people do is shut the propane tanks. So
Shocker.
They run around turning off the propane tanks, so your generator might fail, so you might need a battery backup system or something to power it. But yeah, these systems exist, and I think they obviously do some effect, but nothing is going to stop certain types of wildfire from destroying your home. And even if you keep it from burning, it's still going to have significant smoke damage, which is what we saw from the Marshall Fire. We have now dealt with repeated transactions where the seller either mitigated or didn't mitigate the insulation in the attic, and it's expensive to mitigate it. And it turns out that smoke is really quite toxic when it gets into the insulation. The smoke was toxic, and it's stuck in the insulation of your home, off-gassing. So it could be a very large insurance claim to remove all that insulation, somehow treat the attic space, and then reinstall. So I've seen the quotes. The numbers are high, and I've seen people not do the work. which impacts resale. So maybe they weren't insured for fire. I'm not entirely sure what happened there, but a smart buyer is if a home has been in a wildfire, whether or not it burned. If it burned, it's gone, right? But if it's gotten a little singed, you should still be looking at, even if it has no visible damage,
scot-free, right? Yeah.
Even if there's zero visible damage, that this house was a survivor, you should be looking for smoke mitigation documentation in the due diligence portion of the contract.
Yeah, at least something just to say you had it checked out, or they had it checked out, right?
All right, let's talk about water rights, because this is something that's related, and it's less about fires. It's much more about the value of certain types of property. And in the plains around Boulder, there are all these hobby farms, and some of them have water rights and some of them don't. And if they have water rights, getting your head around the actual market value of the water can be really tricky. There's the value of the water to you, right? So for a few years ago, we were looking at a property that had a large agricultural lot. I think they were growing alfalfa or something on it, but the owner of the house wasn't doing the growth or the growing or the farming. They were leasing it to a farmer, but the water rights were part of the deal. And so we were now looking into evaluating the value of the lease, which reduces the taxation of the property. We were also trying to get our head around the value of the water, and the listing agent's telling us the water is worth $250,000. But the listing agent, frankly, it sounds like they're just making it up. And they're getting data from from the ditch company, who is running a very limited market, right? Like, they control the shares, and there may not have been a transaction in the last 10 years, and they're just throwing out a number. So how do you really know what it's worth? And when it gets that complicated, what we do is bring in an outside consultant, or we strongly advise an outside consultant. This is a cost the buyer must bear, but we help them evaluate the consultant. We look at what they're providing in terms of their research, and certainly we can give our independent, uneducated opinion, right? This is not an area. And we stress
the uneducated, yeah. Right?
I mean, look, I've done a lot of analysis.
It's like we've seen a lot, yeah.
I've done a lot of analysis on all sorts of assets because of my background, so I probably am slightly better qualified than your typical agent. But even then, I'm going to caveat anything I say when it comes to the value of water rights, because it is so complex, and the seniority of the water rights in a drought year could come into play and completely eradicate the value of the water. Like, there's no value if you can't actually use the water because you have no seniority and we're in a drought. So that's the kind of stuff where, if a key component of the property's valuation has water to it, you have to bring in an outside expert. And agents rarely will do that. Instead, they throw around numbers, and you try to dig deeper, and it's made up. It's on thin air. And then the tricky part of that is you really want the house, but now you need time to bring in an outside consultant to evaluate the real value of the water rights. So how to manage that negotiation so that you put it under contract, because you don't want to be spending $10,000 on a water rights expert while somebody else just bought the house, right? Like, you want to lock it down and then give yourself 2 weeks or whatever is necessary to get into the workflow of the water experts to get an actual independent valuation of the water. So this is more typical at the higher end of real estate and down there in the hobby farmland. Up here in the mountains, in the foothills, there's also a consideration of water rights, and usually it's well rights and the quality of the well, but also whether the well is producing not just enough water to recharge the well, as it's called, but also what's the quality of the water, and is there contamination of the water with something like PFAS or other contaminants, and what are the potential solutions if it is, which can also get really expensive if it turns out the well has some problems. And the other issue is the well may not have problems today, but maybe in 5 years or 10 years, if there's drift of material in the underground aquifer, it's not like your well is completely isolated from other people's water. We're all drawing from the same aquifer. So And so what you will find over time when it comes to environmental pollution is that there can be drift, and the mitigation cost could be really high. And this is not something you should go into with your eyes closed. You should go in with eyes wide open and a deep understanding of the potential risks of this type of situation and the costs that you may incur to mitigate your household drinking water. and other types of water that you're using, like you may be using irrigation water to water your gardens or what have you, your fruit trees.
It's I know we talked about this home a while ago that got, I think, a lot of media for the well had arsenic. Do you remember this one? Yeah,
I do. And I remember it was like a big retreat center, and the buyer sued the seller because of I think it might have been failure to disclose.
Yeah, and then the seller was like, we only ever had bottled water or something, some weird...
I don't even remember what... I remember vaguely details about that, but I don't want to say something because these are big dollars that people were suing each other over.
That was a big one, yeah.
And I don't want to get it wrong, but it's not far from my house, that retreat center. It's a really big piece of property that I think was marketed as a home, but really is a retreat center.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I'd say, like, as a general rule of thumb, verify, right? Trust but verify. Check that the well's doing what it's supposed to be doing, and also the quality is there too. I'm thinking about because there's up in the mountains, you've got like softeners for wells, and then are there like sediment filters and stuff too, depending on, I guess, the source of water? Yeah, or is it standard to have a sediment filter? But sediment doesn't take away like heavy metals. Yeah,
I mean, there are all sorts of filters. There's carbon filtration. There's RO systems. There's water softening. If you're going to use an RO system for drinking water, you should remineralize it because pure water is actually not healthy for you to drink. And that's, there's a lot of nuance to this. And if you're not willing to do the homework or at least work with somebody that's going to give you some basics about this stuff, then you really probably shouldn't think about a mountain property.
Yeah. I had a friend who was like shopping for a filter and wanted the water to have like no heavy metals in it. And I was like, well, if you're going to do that, you're going to be creating pure water, and that's less healthy to drink, right? Like this particular source of water was trace amounts, but their opinion was like anything is bad. I'm like, okay. But filtration is such a minefield on its own. And as well, if you're like, I'll just hop on Amazon and see, I can get a filter and it screws onto the end of my faucet and it says it takes care of everything. You're getting lied to. Real filtration is a serious expense and rabbit hole, and I think needs its own verification and inspection too.
Well, under sink RO systems are not that expensive.
Ones. Yeah.
And they do, in theory, produce very pure drinking water, and you can remineralize. That's what we use. And it wasn't crazy money. And I test it every now and then to see the total dissolved solids to see if the membrane is still intact.
You got a TDS,
yeah. It's a simple measure, and it's how you test whether an RO system is still working. One thing I will say about this rabbit hole over water quality is that when I drink city water, I can taste the chlorine and smell the chlorine a mile away. And when I lived in the city of Boulder, and of course I still work in the city of Boulder, but when I lived there, I didn't taste it, right?
Yeah,
and now,
you get used to it, right?
Because we've gotten used to water without the chlorine, when I'm any restaurant, anybody's house, it is such a strong smell of chlorine that it's very difficult to drink the water when I'm in town. That's often why, if you see me wandering around, I'm carrying a water bottle, because I really prefer my mountain RO water to City of Boulder drinking water.
Would you be El Dorado Springs then, or Arrowhead? Because mountain spring water.
The issue there is
like your source is
I mean, the issue there is microplastics that I think are more likely to be in bottled water. So we generally try not to use bottled water. But the irony,
just comparing
of course,
your water like you're being in the mountains is you're basically like your own El Dorado Springs company.
Yeah, in a very miniature way. We just have a domestic well, but it brings into play the whole microplastics issue too, because the tubing is plastic. So like you're not completely getting away from microplastic. In fact, it's one of the hardest things to get out of your intake is microplastics.
So we used to be rainwater in New Zealand, and then every time we went down to the big city, we hated it. We were like, this is the worst tasting water we've ever had. And same with like other towns, like Yeah, there's a lot of snootiness that comes with water too. I have this one friend, and she just exclusively bottled water. Will not touch anything unless it comes out of a bottle. And I'm just like, well, they love you. The companies do. You know.
Well, I have a very distinct memory of a friend of mine from elementary school.
Yeah.
And we used to play on the same soccer team, and I remember him taking a swig of water from. We lived very close to each other, and we lived in the foothills above town, and like we were on the soccer field. He took a swig from the jug, and he was like spat it out. He's like, "Oh, city water."
Wow.
City water. Oh,
that's so funny. But it's like that, yeah. So, okay, we covered water source rights a little bit. Long-term trend. I guess that's really kind of like what we're thinking about, right? Is Boulder's saying that they're in a good position, and it was nice to what you talked about, Osmond. It sounds like they are thinking like a little bit in the long-term trend. Like we're not going to maybe reach a drought definition now, but if trends continue. Right?
They're going to likely put in messaging for water conservation because the fear is this is not a one-year event. This is a multi-year event. And even though we're not going to be tapping into reserves this year, if it stays like this, next year could be really bad. So we should get ahead of it by having some messaging. In other words, the city's going to lie to you and encourage water conservation even though we're not in a drought because they're worried about year 2 and 3 of this event. And we're clearly not smart enough to understand that we're talking about a future drought, not today's drought. So they're going to lie to us.
Sometimes it's needed, I guess. It's called a voluntary restriction, right? Or a voluntary something or another. Westminster's doing something to it. They're like, where there's no mandatory, but we encourage you very strongly to not water shit.
What we'd like you to do is water shame each other. If you see somebody watering after 10 a.m. or before 6 p.m., we really would like you to shame them for wasting water.
We've created a Facebook page. Take their picture, post it up on there. We start the public shaming at the town square at 6 o'clock on Mondays. Yeah.
I mean,
be good.
I just hope they don't do things like close the little fountain on Pearl Street where all the kids play in the water. Like there's a water, like the kids are getting wet. It's such a cute scene. It's one of the nicest things about downtown Boulder. But if they do something like close that for water conservation, I will be really disappointed.
We'll take to the streets. That'll be our final straw.
That'll be my protest. All right, let's move on. So I think we covered the closing table pretty thoroughly. We've talked about where the water comes from. We've talked about whether we have adequate water or not for the near term and long term. And we've talked about fire and insurability and sprinkler systems. And if you're a buyer or seller, how should you be thinking about this? If you're a seller and you're putting a large component of value on the value of your water, you also should get backup. Okay, like you shouldn't just claim it's worth $200,000. You should have some sort of analysis that supports the $200,000 valuation. And that could be a discounted cash flow analysis. It could be, hey, the last 3 shares that sold, where the buyer paid this dollar amount. Like that should help us get our head around what the water is worth. And of course, there's variability between a drought year and a non-drought year for the value of that water.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Oh, one more piece. One more piece I want to mention, and that's about storage. And there's a lot of not legal storage going on of water throughout the farmlands of Boulder. Okay, it's obvious, it's there. And if you're buying, you may want to vet whether that pond that was created 25 years ago is actually legal water detention or it's an illegal hidden pond that somebody created to store water and the county has not busted anybody about it, but that doesn't mean it's legal. So be careful putting a lot of value on something unless you have, as a buyer, have vetted that storage is legitimate and legally established.
I would imagine, too, in times of drought, the county is like, okay, we're going to go find these illegal detention ponds and get them. So, especially, looking into this kind of stuff.
There's also a difference between a domestic well and an agricultural well. And you may, and to be, it's not just, hey, you got a well permit. If you're planning on a lot of farming activity, you may want to do some more research and make sure that the uses allowed for that type of well are actually going to support what you plan to do with the property. And I think we should leave it at that, Hamish.
Got one more.
All right. Okay.
If you are not looking in Boulder, this is an important item of due diligence, I think, for long-term ownership, is where does your municipality get its water? What seniority does it have? And when SHTF, what kind of restrictions are you going to be looking at? I mean, Erie kind of raised the alarm first, in a sense, and so they kind of, put their cards out for show. It looks like they're already feeling a bit of a squeeze, whereas Boulder has a nice reserve. Westminster does with Stanley Lake, and it's a weird one. You don't expect to, I think, the taps always flow, you would imagine, but you've been here with Drought, Osmond, and we might be looking at something else too.
Well, it's not just Erie. So I don't know when Erie declared, but the governor activated Phase 2 drought, the Phase 2 of the drought response plan, and the state's drought task force on March 16th. So it's not Erie. I don't know if I'd give Erie that much credit. They're just doing what they have to do. I don't know if they're first.
It's not credit for being proactive. I think they're running low on their reserves. But what was it? Okay, final thing. CDOT is going to be reallocating funds from unused snowplows to fire mitigation as well. So that'll be nice to see, considering the dryness that we've got.
That's great. Yep. Knock on wood, we do not have a horrific fire season. It rained up here last night, and boy, it felt so good. We lost power from, I think, 7 p.m. till, according to Excel, it didn't go back on until 4 in the morning. We fell asleep to the generator running. And, I guess I would say thank you, Generac and Whole House Generators and automatic systems that turn them on and shut them off when the power goes out. Because our food was cold and our house was warm, and it was nice. We're very grateful for having that system. And if you're a buyer, you may want to think about energy resilience as well, because wildfires frequently result in longer durations of power outages. And it's not just wildfires. Like the extremes of weather that are likely to come with more climate change can result in loss of power for longer periods of time. All right.
This one time when, go ahead.
No, go ahead. I was ready to move on, but go ahead.
Oh, I'm segueing. This one time, Osmond, a couple years back, you took the inspection objection and the inspection resolution, and you read them, and you understood what they meant. Yep.
Let me tell this story. Okay, let me tell the story.
It is your story, after all.
All right, so this is the importance of understanding norms and evaluating what the impact might be by violating those norms. So as you probably know, or you should know, in the real estate process, in the real estate sale process, it's not just about the price, it's also how do you get to closing. And the buyers typically have a right to inspect. And if they find things, which almost always they do, they find unexpected things, they have the right to issue a notice to correct or an inspection objection. Let me back up. I'm talking about the state of Colorado. If you're listening in another state, this may or may not apply to you. Here in the state of Colorado, the buyer has the right to issue an inspection objection, and then the buyer and seller arm wrestle a bit to come up with what's a reasonable response to the issues that they discover. That's the intention, and buyer can back out if they're not happy with what the seller is offering. Unless, of course, you wrote some language into your additional provisions that carve out your protections in order to be more competitive in a bidding war. Mm-hmm. That happens all the time. So you have to be really careful with the languaging you chose. Okay, so there's a norm to this. And the norm is that the buyer's agent writes up the list of things that, and they hammer it like Martin Luther on the door to say these are the things that are wrong. Okay, and then the church or the seller here says, okay, well, we come up with what I'll offer you to fix these issues. Maybe it's a credit. Maybe they're fixed. Maybe they're actually repairing stuff. There is a generally understood expectation that the things you're objecting to were not visible and obvious when you wrote the offer, right? And they're not trivial, and they're not, and they are not out of line with something that you might expect with an older home to some extent, right? And so there are items like a sewer line and a roof that are non-negotiable. Either the sewer line works or it doesn't work, right? The seller is not going to like half repair a sewer line. Like the sewer line has to work to sell the house. The roof and the age of the roof, right? This is a system of the house that eventually deteriorates. It reaches obsolescence and it needs to be repaired or replaced.
Yeah.
You can only repair it for so long. But sometimes it's visible that the roof is bad, or they disclose that the roof is bad in advance of you writing your offer. You have that in writing, and now you wrote your offer, so in theory you already knew this, right? And smart listing agents will actually say, I need the seller's property disclosure with the offer because I want to make sure you acknowledge the condition of the roof is 20 years old. We're not going to give you $30,000 on an inspection process because the roof is old. I want to make sure your buyer knows that before we go under contract with you, because we're not going to the dance if that's the game you're going to play. So there's all this stuff that happens before you even go under contract. But the norm is that the seller's agent responds. And I had a deal. This is the story.
With the inspection resolution.
Yeah, so this is the story. I'm the buyer. I'm the buyer's agent, sorry. And that means I'm representing the buyer in the sale process. We put a property under contract. And the listing agent, who is very well known and does a lot of business and has been in the business a long time, was very unhappy with how we handled the inspection objection. And the reason we handled it this way was because it was extremely difficult to communicate verbally with her.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Every phone call with her was listening to like a volume of words coming at you at 1,000 miles an hour with no space in between, right? Like it was the kind of person that interrupts everything you say. And when you say, hold, I'm almost going to use her name, but I'm not. I'm gonna use a different.
You remember the name is impressive.
Let's call her. Yeah. Let's call her Mary. Okay, that's not her name, but let's call her Mary. So every time you try to explain something, like walk Mary through something, or like talk to her, it was like interruption. Here's how it really is. Interruption. Here's how it really is. And I explained that to my client. I'm like, look, there's like 7 things that we want to have fixed. There are 30 things on the inspection report. And because I know this agent is very difficult to negotiate with, not difficult to get results, but difficult to just communicate with, why don't we do something that's a little different?
But there's no reason you couldn't do it, right?
There's no reason you can't do it this way.
Yeah.
And there's nothing in the contract to buy and sell that or that says you can't do it this way. But in addition to writing the inspection objection, we object to these 7 things. I wrote up a resolution that says we will accept 5 of these things getting repaired as a potential resolution, and sent them both to her with my buyer's signatures on it so that she saw that, and wrote a cover letter that said, look, there are 30 things on the inspection report. We're only really objecting to 7, but I've talked to them. They're willing to accept these 5. If you could agree on these 5, we can move to closing. Made it really easy for her.
Yeah,
and
like
the
literally.
phone rings. This is like 9:00 at night. The phone rings after I submitted this, like within 15 minutes of me submitting it to Mary. And again, let me add, that's not her name. She calls me, angry, shouting, probably drunk, okay? I'm just guessing based on her level of anger, telling me I'm so out of line. It's her right, and it's like I'm totally doing this wrong. She's supposed to draft the inspection resolution, not me. And that now, what is she supposed to do? Is she's supposed to present this to her sellers? And she was so angry, foaming at the mouth, angry, and because I had done something out of turn, and I had violated the norm of giving her the chance to take this list of complaints and talk to her seller and come up with what they think is reasonable. But at the same time, I wanted to frame this with what we think is reasonable.
Yeah.
And it was a tough negotiation. In the end, we got what we wanted, but boy, it was just,
no kidding.
It was unpleasant in the level of yelling and the ego that I bruised by supposedly being out of turn. So I think that the reason this is relevant as a story, particularly if you're a newer agent, is that you need to understand the norms in this industry. And when you choose to violate the norms, you need to have an understanding of the potential responses. And somebody that has a really big ego needs to be right, okay, all the time, could have a really over-exaggerated response to something that feels out of turn to them. So, knowing her response now, I don't know if I would do it the same way because it wasn't worth it. Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Since that time, I now put it in the cover letter. If we're going to object to 30 things, but we really, if there's 30 things on the inspection report, and there's really 7 things that we're really have an issue with, we put the 7 things on the inspection objection, and I write about potential solutions in the cover letter. I say, look, the solutions to this are hire an electrician. They're going to solve like 5 of those things. Hire a plumber. They're going to solve 2 of these things. That's 2 phone calls for your seller to make, and we're done. And usually that approach works really well. And I also call, because some people don't read.
Do you call ahead or?
I call immediately upon sending it over. Yeah. Although sometimes I call ahead, and calling ahead might be a better approach, to be honest. Like, look,
honestly, it depends if it's a communicative agent, right?
It depends, right? Yeah. Like, there's an agent we're working with right now who's great at communication and extremely professional and really listening. And with him, verbal communication works really well, and then backing it up with writing is another approach to doing it. And I think we've reached a conclusion with this week's negotiation with that agent that is favorable to everybody. It's fair and reasonable. But the point I'm trying to make is that the 7 levels of hell that the other side may want to put you through because of ego and lack of professionalism can be really a surprising result for violating a norm, even though there's nothing contractual that says it has to be done this way. You could submit both in writing.
In a way, you're kind of saving her some work, right? By writing it up for her and everything.
That's what I thought. Yeah. What I didn't expect was the level of anger it generated. I think that speaks to the spectrum of competency and professionalism that exists. And just because an agent does a lot of business does not mean that they're actually the most professional person. And so when you're interviewing them, you may want to ask questions around that gauge their professionalism. Like, how would you handle it if 7 things come up on the inspection objection? Walk me through how we negotiate with the inspection process. And what you should hear things like, well, one thing we can do is pre-inspect. Pre-inspecting, before we even list the house, gives you an opportunity to address the major and expensive issues that come up on inspection. And then when we present it to the buyer as part of the seller's property disclosure, we also send them the inspection report with a cover letter that says you've already addressed most of these things. You're not going to address these cosmetic items. And that does what? It increases transparency and trust, and the buyer and seller feel better about working with each other because trust is higher, and so your sale price will be higher. There is downside to that approach, okay? I used to routinely, we just pay for pre-inspections. But then I had enough deals go sideways from that where they weren't the majority, like 1 in 5 would go sideways because you're effectively delivering a health report card on the house when people are in the honeymoon phase, right? It's sort of like...
Oh, gotcha. Yeah.
It's sort of like you're going out on a first date, you're falling in love, you've agreed to a third or fourth date, you're about to seal the deal, and they're like, here's my STD panel, here's my blood
incredibly
test.
Responsible, however, not romantic at all.
Here's my financials, right? Here's how much debt I owe other people. Here are my tax returns. Like, it is so not romantic. It is so like, for an engineer... or an engineer-type person, scientists really love seeing this type of disclosure. But for others that are more arts and culture, this sounds very stereotypical, but I'm going to go ahead and say it. Like, do you really want to interrupt the honeymoon period with a health report card on the house? You really want them to feel the emotional pull, spend their own money on an inspection, because now they are what? They're more attached to the sale process. Yeah. Right? And now they're like going to try to work it out. They're probably going to try to extract at least the cost of the inspection from you. So there are 2 ways to do it. And let's talk about which way you as a seller prefer. And I've now disclosed the pros and cons of both ways. That's how I would answer that question.
Yeah. No, that's a good point. I mean, human condition. Bummer. But I can absolutely see some of the less, I guess, analytical, very emotional buyers seeing this health report and being like, well, love is dead, I'm out, and just calling it.
Yeah. I just had a memory of, the one thing that we haven't mentioned is when your client, you're representing them as the buyer, and they want to object to something that is ridiculous, right? Like was visible and obvious and cosmetic.
Do you want to hit that?
I'm going to just mention it, that this happens all the time to buyer's agents. And the buyer, I think their emotional journey is they want some clawback, right? Like they know the cracks in the driveway were visible,
Dude,
but they want some clawback. And sometimes we have to go to bat for things that we don't really believe is an issue with the house either. But it doesn't matter what we believe. It's what our client believes. And we had a deal a number of years ago that had, I think we could say this, it's okay, we had a squeaky floor issue. Yeah. And the listing agent, when we submitted that as in the inspection objection, picked up the phone and tore me a new one and said, that's the most ridiculous thing. How can you possibly have let your buyer think that that's okay? And I had to tell her that I agree with you completely. It's ridiculous. I've never had to put that on an inspection objection before. You're right, listing agent with the big ego that knows how this business works. I agree with you completely. But you know what? I'm not buying the house. It doesn't really matter what I think. And what the buyer thinks is if we can't solve this issue, they're going to walk. And oh, by the way, they've already walked from 2 other houses. And this will be the
real
third
issue for them. Yeah.
And sound really matters to them. And this was a late discovery. And so what you need to tell your seller is that I agree with you guys completely, but if the buyer doesn't see 25 grand for this issue, we're going to walk. And this particular price point, 25 grand, is trivial. So they should just fork over the 25 grand and hate my buyer. That's totally fine. It's part and parcel of this business. They don't have to be friends. Mm-hmm. But if they want the sale to go through with this particular buyer, either we get an amendment with 25 grand or my buyer's going to walk. And the listing agent hung up the phone on me, did not say goodbye. I think that was the end of the conversation.
Take them out for lunch.
I've tried. We've not been able to pull that together. But the next day we had an amendment in my inbox for 25 grand, and we stayed in the deal.
I remember that. And I think, too, these particular clients, you'd been doing this from day dot, where you were like, we will object to these things. I've never seen this, and I don't know, like you can't be like, you're going to get this money back. You can't guarantee that to your buyers, but you definitely set up like this is a very uncommon objection. We're going to ask for it because sure enough, it's a material thing. We even have the report. I think we did from one of the structural folks, which interesting structural company too, that put together that report. But yeah, you had the expectations set up, I think, really fairly. Across the board.
But it's also disingenuous if the listing agent says to the buyer's agent, this is ridiculous. You know it's ridiculous. Mm-hmm. I know it's ridiculous.
There's so much
and you say what?
TV posturing.
And if you say, no, it's not ridiculous, listing agent, I agree. This squeaky floor thing is a big problem. You lose all credibility. But in the negotiation, if you agree with them when they're right and then lay down the line, it doesn't matter. It honestly doesn't matter. I agree with you completely, but that's not going to get the deal done. If the seller wants the deal done, then my buyer needs 25 grand. That's the bottom line. I don't like saying it, but that's where we are.
As a footnote, we can no longer, I at least, can no longer walk through a home without hearing a floor squeak. And it is so top of mind, even now, this many years later, that a squeaky floor, I now have this issue. And it's so funny. But I'm totally hyper aware of them now.
Well, there is something to be said about sound. And I did read some study a few years ago that the more successful you are professionally and financially, the more likely you're going to be very sensitive to sound over time. Like you become more and more sound sensitive because you value your time on this planet so differently than most people do until you get much older. And you get older, you get a little deafer. But this particular, like if you're in your 30s and you've been ridiculously successful, it's not uncommon that you are very sensitive to sound, and you become more sensitive as you become more successful. So it was just our first brush into it. I still have my sound pressure meter that I bought for that particular client, and it was a good learning curve and also a good learning experience, and also I think a fruitful negotiation for our client. They're very happy, but It was a very interesting deal, and that was not the tale from the trench I thought we were talking about. But I think we've now covered two of them, and it's time to move on to our next segment. All right, let's talk about market conditions. In this particular case, we're talking about Boulder condos. And it isn't actually CU kitty condo season. There's a weird little blip in the market that usually happens around October. And I think what occurs is kids come home and start talking about pre-leasing. And when the numbers hit mommy and daddy, they freak. And they're like, we're not going to spend that much on rent for you to live in some slummy apartment. Or with some poorly managed rental. Let's shop. You're going to be at CU for 4 years, 3 more years, and likely,
first year is required on campus.
Usually on campus is required, and after that, it's likely that your siblings might choose CU too. So, and Boulder's an incredible town with one of the safest real estate markets in the country. So why don't we shop around and buy you something, and that way we don't have to deal with a slumlord, and maybe you'll also learn something as a young person about property management and financials. We use it as a teaching experience. Even if I lose a little money in the worst case scenario, it's a better deal than just throwing it away on a slumlord. That's kind of how a lot of parents think about the Boulder housing market, a lot of CU parents. And that first occurs around October. And then in December and January, there's a scrum or a rush for people to pre-lease. And so people may have already signed a lease, and students may have already signed a lease with their parents co-signing. So they may be sort of locked in. And I say sort of locked in because it might be possible to swap out a roommate. And so we see parents shopping in March and April and May, or they've taken the risk. They've told Junior that we're not going to pre-lease. We're going to find you something to buy. But now the tension is starting to rise, right? We're into the April market. They have basically 2 months, right, to find something. Yeah. So this is when the CU kitty condo market kicks into sort of its second wind. And let's go through market conditions. And I want to add that the brokerage, myself and other agents on the team, we don't just represent single-family house buyers and sellers. We also represent condos and townhome buyers and sellers, and we do have deep knowledge about CU and locations that might really work well, developments that have historically worked really well and that tend to be very liquid. And we can back all of our thoughts and advice with actual analysis, and we can do it usually in real time to help advise you to be smarter about your decision. But this is just a high-level analysis, okay? Keep that in mind. It is not a granular analysis specifically just for CU. And we're going to look at the city of Boulder, not Boulder County, and we're only looking at attached dwellings. Okay, and this data is through March, so it's giving us March data even though today's April 2nd. Keep in mind that this data is therefore likely to be revised. It's revised in real time. If you talk to me in 3 days, it's going to have shifted. But at this point, because of how the month of February worked out, like if you look at the month of February, most closings happen toward the end of the week on the last week of the month. The last full week of the month was last week. So there were probably a lot of closings on the 26th and 27th of March. Did I say February? March.
I think so, March, yeah.
But at this point, there's been Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday already for agents and their offices to update the MLS. So I don't think the difference in a few days is going to be massive, but there will be some difference. And I just feel like it's important to mention that, particularly for people that are used to financial markets where data is revised from like the Fed or government sources, but market data, when it's released, is usually like, because the books are done and you're getting
pretty cemented. Yeah.
You're getting, in theory, you're getting data that, first, it's not 2 days after the end of the quarter. It's like a month after the end of the quarter, you're getting the data. Yeah. But we're giving it to you 2 days after the end of the month, just because I think it's actually reasonably accurate for what it is. All right.
At a very least, it's a glimpse. And then, right, like you're saying, it's not necessarily kitty condo season. So it's more of maybe it's a warm-up for those listeners out there who are thinking this might be them. You know,
maybe.
A primer.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm just going back a few years to see what this looks like, to make what I'm about to say and make sure it actually reflects.
I could give you my feelings, and then you can give me the facts if you're interested.
You want to do it that way? You want to feel me what you think is happening?
Yeah. So I think personally, from what I've kind of seen in the rental market, and then maybe anecdotally, is that these condos and attached dwellings are somewhat sliding sideways. And the reasoning for it, I think, is HOA costs are increasing due to insurance and management fees. And I'm imagining that potential buyers are seeing these HOA cost increases, and it's kind of putting them off. And so that sliding sideways or decrease in prices for attached condos and dwellings is in theory to kind of make up for the increased management cost. And then going a little bit into the future of things, you were talking, I mean, the Boulder Valley draft comp plan, and then the 55th and Arapahoe development, and that also North Boulder development, those are all attached dwellings. So I think we're going to have a serious supply issue, oversupply of attached condos and dwellings in general. But that's me.
I mean, that's a good theory. Since we framed this up from a CU perspective, let me just share a little story. And when I first moved to Boulder and I was in my Rotary Club, one of the Rotarian members asked me to do a little analysis on why the condo they bought had not appreciated in 8 years, was worth basically what they paid for it 8 years earlier. And I said, sure, let me look at that. And it was kind of puzzling. And then I thought, I think what's going on here is you're too far from CU. Oh. And what I did was I drew a little pin with a circle on it of like a quarter mile or something like that around CU. And I took the median sale price of a condo within that half mile circle or mile circle. And then I went to where this property was and also drew a circle around it. And I did the median sale price, and then I took all the data from the last decade, dumped it into a spreadsheet for these two different locations, and then did the median sale price over time. And it was just shocking how different they were trading.
But clear, night and day kind of?
Night and day difference in performance of these assets. And basically the bottom line is the closer to CU, the better when it came to condos and townhomes. I think I may have also looked at downtown. I definitely did CU and then this location, which is on the northeast side of town at 30th and Iris, versus close to CU versus close to downtown. And the takeaway was what you'd expect to hear: location, location, location. Buy really close to CU or really close to downtown. If you had done that 10 years ago, you would have made a lot of money. Instead, you cheaped out and you bought way out at 30th and Iris. And that thing is just skidded sideways, so your return has been not paying a slumlord, and you're getting your money back, but you lost 2 or 3% annualized CPI or inflation, plus your cost of carrying it with a loan. So being cheap cost you money, and you should have bought closer to CU. I'm sorry, that's the conclusion of why your thing is not selling. And no, I don't want the listing. Thank you. And I did this analysis because I had free time.
Gently, yeah.
And that was the conclusion, right? And so, so keep that in mind if you are in the CU Kitty condo land. But I agree with you, Hamish, that the cost of dues and insurability has risen so quickly. The association dues have risen so quickly that it's put downward pressure on pricing, and there has been significant increases in inventory. So I'm actually going to show it on the screen in real time.
Show me state.
And if your agent can't do this, you've got the wrong agent. You should be able to get into the war room with them and do this type of analysis in real time. This is just City of Boulder, by the way, not Boulder County. On this pull down, there are both. We're just looking at attached dwellings. We're not doing any distinction on bedrooms or baths or square footage, but you could do those too. You have to make sure that that InfoSparks is set to the date period that makes sense for you. I've chosen max, but you also have to look into this pull down because it could do a rolling 3, 6, or 12 months, which totally obliterates data in many cases. Sometimes it's useful, but in many cases it's not. All right, the first thing we're looking at is new listings. And you can see there's like a heartbeat, right? This is the normal seasonal pattern from the last decade. It looks like an EKG. And
it does.
What happened this year is we had 99 new listings hit the market in February. Compare that to last February when we had 80 hit the market. So you have almost 20 more hitting the market. Hamish, you could do the math. 99 over 80 minus 1 on your calculator. What percentage is that? But March, last month,
23.
there's a 23% increase in February, and then March, only 91 listings hit the market, and that's a decrease of 27%. So, and the market, it's pretty rare to see new listings drop from February to March. I mean, you look at the other data, you've got February to March, big uptick. It goes from 80 to 125. In 2024, it went from 87 to 95.
Yeah.
In 2023, it went from 51 to 76. So most years you see an uptick, not a downtick, but this year we see a downtick. We see an early increase in inventory and then a downtick. That might be rate driven. We know that rates the last few weeks have been up, not down. But 27% fewer new listings. Total inventory of homes for sale. You have 5.7% more. You can also see the general increase from 2022 when the market was at its peak. It's been gradually rising, and the seasonal swing has been getting bigger. Last year it peaked in July. The previous year it peaked in August. So this is selection. This is the overall number of homes that are available that are attached dwellings in the city of Boulder. Your highest numbers are July and August for the last couple of years, and then the market has shifted and plunges down. And as of right now,
too, like the busy season is barely even dipping into the inventory.
That's right. Well, I mean,
yeah.
We'll get there.
Yeah.
It does dip in. Like this chart doesn't show absorption. And I do absorption separately in my spreadsheets, but not in InfoSparks. But one thing I want to point out is that last month, 241 homes were on the market. 240 is higher than any number, any peak. That was March, and it's higher than any peak in the last 10 years. So March had higher inventory, better selection than any time in the last 10 years, except for 2024 and 2025. So take out the last 2 years, and you're looking at way higher than peak inventory or peak selection. So a lot of inventory compared to the previous 10 years. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that makes sense. Another way of saying it is 8 years of normal pattern. The last 2 have been really high, and that pattern is continuing, although not at quite the same pace. We're only 5.7% above last year. Under contract or pending plunged last month, 24% below the previous year. There were only 47 condos and townhomes that were under contract last month. How does that compare
matches
to
the yeah.
I mean, you really need to think about this as a percentage of total inventories, which I do on the spreadsheets, but it doesn't have an option here to look at that as a percentage here on InfoSparks. If you're my client, call me. We'll go down this rabbit hole all the way if that's what you want. But for purposes of the pod, we'll stop there. And then with closings, how many closings did we have last month? Only 57, a very slight uptick from a year ago at 1.8% more than a year ago. Days on market's a little tricky, right? Because when it got really frothy, days on market basically plunged to zero because things were flying off the market and there was so much cash in the economy. Today, the median days on market is probably a reasonable data point again. Like there's just this period of time from I'd call it early 2020, maybe April 2021, all the way through to maybe July 2023, where I just don't believe the data because of how crazy the market was during that time. But today I believe the data is more reasonable and probably probably accurate. 50 was the median days on market last month, and that's an increase of 8.7%. Okay.
That July 2023, that's when I bought. Right there on the low days on market. Yeah. It's always frothy on the entry level, and this is attached dwellings too, so a little different. But I'm like, oh yeah. Yeah, you're
detached. Okay, so let's look at sale price. Sale prices, because we're only talking about 50-something sales, right? How many sales? 57. Mm-hmm. Sale price can really swing every month. And so when I see volatility like this, it's more indicative of what's selling in the price range than what is actually happening with valuation. You have to look at longer time periods to really understand valuation. But I'll give you the stat. The median sale price was $460,000 last month, which is down 15.6% from a year ago. Also down massively from February when it was $620,000. That doesn't mean your home has lost that much value or anything even remotely like it. Let's look at price per square foot, which is, I think, a little better as a measure of how valuations have changed. You can certainly see the volatility isn't not as extreme. you're looking at 450 was the median price per square foot, and that's down 2.6% from a year ago. Shows per pending and shows per listing, that's if the showing service is using showing time. I don't think it's accurate otherwise. And I don't usually quote this data because I just don't believe it. But the median shows per pending last month were 6.5 showings before it went under contract, a decrease of 31%. And the median shows per listing was 3.7 last month. So only 3.7 times a month are they getting showings. You could certainly see if you believe it, right? This is one of those, I don't know if I believe the data moments, but you can see how low it is, right? The number of showings compared to back in 2022 when it was 13.7 was the median, right? Like what a difference in market conditions.
That's more like, I guess there's more buyers out there too, right? It's not necessarily... And that shows per listing, but the listing doesn't necessarily had to have sold, right? It could be withdrawn and still have those showings. Yeah. It's a weird one. Yeah.
Shows per listing is just the number of showings that a listing is getting, and shows to pending status is the number of showings before a listing actually goes under contract. And not all listings go under contract. Some of them are just undesirable at the given price range or what have you, and they're not going to find a buyer in these current market conditions.
Real interesting stats, yeah.
But this is something I want to point out actually to some of our clients, because when there's concern, hey, we're not getting a lot of showings. It's like, well, actually you are.
That's a good point.
It doesn't feel like it because people don't actually have access to this data. They don't realize the median number of showings per listing, right? Oh, is this median? It doesn't say median.
It just is.
It just is. Well, that's great. 3.7. I'm sure it's average or median. It's just bad presentation of data. If I downloaded it into a spreadsheet, it would probably give me the accurate. I could also look it up in the user manual. Like, we don't usually, again, look at shows per pending, shows to pending, or shows per listing.
One field that interests me, if we have the time, is a percent of list price received. I saw that tab in there.
I just don't believe that's even remotely accurate. If you really want to see it, I'll show it. It's one of these things where, like, I just don't think that it's possible for them to have accurate data because of how often agents are refreshing, right? A big stale listing, especially at the high end, they put a new MLS number on it, and suddenly it's no longer the percentage of original list price. But, I mean, the median, in theory, should wash out some of that data. So the percentage of original list price in March was 97%, and February was effectively the same. I mean, versus look back in 2022, the median was 104%. Yeah. Okay. I caveated that with, I don't believe this data. What I prefer to show is
the intelligent approach.
What I prefer to do is, okay, you really want to buy in Newlands, or you really want to buy in Mapleton Hill, or Martin Acres, or Table Mesa. Let's drill down to the property types that you like and the price ranges that work for you and the number of beds and the number of baths. And then let's pull the data specific to that type of property, because that'll be much more reflective of what you need to know. It's actionable information for what you're trying to do, buying or selling, versus this data is, 30,000 foot level analysis.
Yeah, we'll dust off the old Excel cells and relearn the shortcuts and the hotkeys and really get to it.
Well, also look at the specific comps, right? Like, sometimes you'll see something sell really fast, and you're like, oh, it was turnkey, and this agent underpriced it by $200,000 because they don't care about their seller who's out of town. They just want to get this thing done in a weekend, over cash deal, closing in 2 weeks. We don't do that. But I see that sometimes. I'm like, oh, this is crazy, right? Like, this listing makes no sense. And then we see another one that was overpriced, not updated, sat on the market for a year, on a busy location. Okay, well, that explains why that one took forever to sell and eventually sold for a lot less than it should have, because they overpriced it and they just waited. They decided the wait and see approach rather than pricing it right. So,
yeah. Good little market snip. Yeah. It's an interesting case. I mean, there's just that graph of inventory was insane to see, of how much inventory is out there for attached right now. Yeah,
and this is where it's the saying of Warren Buffett comes to mind, and that is, when others are greedy, he gets fearful. And when others are fearful, he gets greedy. And this is the best selection we've seen in a long time for attached dwellings. The last 2 years have been high selection. It's also other segments of the market. The $3 million plus segment is full of inventory. This is the time to negotiate, be highly selective, find the right home. Versus 2022, people are throwing cash at garbage. Listings they should not have been getting any offers, in my opinion, were getting bidding wars.
Yes, they were. And we have a poster child. I don't know if it's sold yet, but when that one does sell,
we'll have to track it again and see what happened to it.
Yeah, you already know. There's that one, and this was more top of mind when we were talking about future developments and lands that have been earmarked for development, but it's, buy land, they're not making it anymore. And it's like, Boulder's going to develop, the writing's on the wall with the comp plan and everything. Vacant lots at this point are pretty hard to come by, but they're certainly not making it anymore.
It's not just vacant, it's the size of the lot. So there's an agent who follows our content. I won't mention her name because I don't know if she'd want to be mentioned, but she's been following our content for a long time. She messaged me a week ago and pointed out that there are a couple of lots that are for houses for sale on really large lots, including one in Fraser Meadows that we went and looked at. And that house is worth very little money, but that lot at 30,000 square feet potentially could be subdivided into 3 lots or 4 lots or 5 lots, or could be a giant apartment building if the Boulder Valley comp plan goes through. It's worth a lot of money that has nothing to do with the structure on the house, and the agent's not even marketing that. And she said she messaged the agent and he hasn't responded. And I said, okay, well, it's not my business to tell an agent how to market themselves, but I agree that the development value of that is about to skyrocket. So it's not empty lots, it's just big lots in general. Oh, it's like that horrible chain store, Big Lots.
That's exactly what I thought about.
Are worth a lot. That name is, I've always found morally offensive. Big Lots is just like...
Yeah. I don't know, something about it just has a cheap connotation to it.
It does.
Big lots,
it does.
Yeah.
It's just there's something offensive about how it markets to a certain, I don't know, mindset. But big parcels are worth a lot of money and are going to be worth a lot more as people realize what the impact of the Boulder Valley comp plan is, and all sorts of property get dezoned. And so expect that to happen. I don't think there's any off-ramp at this point. I've said that repeatedly to all over the place. It's just shocking how few people seem to care, but it will have a huge impact. And there are people that are losing a lot of money because they don't realize that the value of their property is going to explode in the coming years, just on the basis of the fact it's a big lot.
Yeah. So if you're listening, check within and see where you lie.
No, if you're listening, Hamish, and you have a big lot and you don't know the value of it, call me. I'd like to buy it.
Okay. Yeah, and don't learn the value before we buy it. Yeah.
No, that's a joke. That's a joke. We do not
representative of the brokerage, right?
we do not steal houses from people. It's unethical to take advantage of widows and orphans. We don't play that game.
Well said. If you're not a widow and an orphan, anyway.
It's also why I also don't wholesale. It's just unethical.
Scummy.
The people that are in that industry, not all of them, but in my experience, many of them are more than happy to steal the house from you and flip it the same day for 50, 100 grand because you just didn't know the value, and that's your ignorance. That's the whole we buy ugly houses people, and I just feel bad for the people that are so desperate they go that route. Okay, sales of the week, Hamish.
Great.
And the lessons learned.
Mm-hmm.
Before we start, I want to mention that last week I talked about 700 Highland Ave, and a listener reached out and corrected me. I did not see it marketed anywhere. And if you're not already aware, you can download the Compass app and see Compass exclusives right on the app. I have it on my phone. I didn't see it there, so I assumed it was marketed somehow otherwise. And it turns out that this person absolutely 100% says it was on Compass exclusives for a brief period of time. So people didn't find out about it through Compass exclusives. We just don't routinely track Compass exclusives. We also don't have it backdoored into the database to see what was on the market and for how long it was on the market. And this is where Compass exclusives creates opaqueness in marketing. And you may think it has never been marketed. Your agent can tell you, hey, I don't see it anywhere. but it doesn't mean that it wasn't, shown to a bunch of people. And so that it shown to a bunch of people and none of them bit can really influence how much you're willing to pay for something, can it?
Yeah.
This is false exclusivity all day long. Okay,
I'm no member of the regulatory board in Colorado, probably for good reason, but if you can log on to an app and see these exclusive properties as a member of the public, sure feels like it ought to be on the MLS. Anyway.
There's a battle going on between Zillow and Redfin over this, and I think Zillow backed down, and Redfin is continuing with their exclusives. I think Zillow said that if you make
Compass?
a Redfin, what did I say? Compass and
Redfin.
Compass and Zillow. Sorry,
Yep, okay.
Compass and Zillow. And if you make it a Compass exclusive, then Zillow's not going to put it on their database. But Zillow backed down, and ultimately it looks like Compass won that battle. I don't know enough about it to comment past that, other than it's easy enough to see what's an exclusive on Compass. It just doesn't have the data mining or data analysis tools that the MLS does. And it can lead a buyer to, frankly, radically overpay because you think this has not been marketed before, when it turns out it has been marketed, and anyone with good common sense said, no thank you, it's overpriced. But your agent said, oh man, look, it's an exclusive. No one's seen it before. Let's get in while the getting's good.
Go quick. Yeah.
I've heard about this listing. It was on the market. I heard about this listing through my office, and it's like, before it goes live, let's go get it, because once it's on the MLS, there'll be a feeding frenzy for this thing, right? And so how do you know what's true or not if the data is not accurate and available for your agent to evaluate? All agents that are members of the club, you shouldn't have to be a Compass agent to access something
it's a free market thing. And this is a case where free market is better for the consumer, and it's getting shunted. Maybe that's another topic, and I think we could go on.
I mean, there's an end run. Okay, so let's say I represent the buyer, and we get the whisper that there's a exclusive listing that's about to go live. We can reach out. We have friends at Compass who I imagine can access the back end and see the data and say, has this been a Compass exclusive before? But one of the pitches they tell sellers is that if you use the Compass exclusive tool, it will not start a clock ticking on days on market. So it can't be both. And I think that the reality is that you probably don't know how long or if it's been a Compass exclusive before or not. If you're a Compass agent and you know the answers to these questions, please let me know. I'm very curious how you would advise a buyer on a property that is being whisper marketed, and whether or not you can see into the database at Compass of whether it's been an exclusive before, and if so, at what price and how many days on market. Because I'll tell you what's really offensive is you find out like 6 months later that it's been marketed all over town and you thought you were getting an exclusive, but every top agent in town knew about it, or at least some did, and they shopped it to their well-heeled buyers, and all of them said, what are you, effing kidding me? That's crazy overpriced. Come back to me when the price is half that number. And you're the only one that we're taking advantage of. I think it's lawsuit territory.
It devalues the whole value proposition of it to begin with. It's I think not the subject, but I think
what
it is
value proposition are you what you just said? It devalues the value proposition. What
the whole idea, right, is like if you get an exclusive listing, you can get it before the market froths for it, or like before you get into a bidding war for the property, right? Like it's being whispered. If everybody's already seen it because it's gone out on the Compass network and all the other agents have seen it, it's been out for 6 months. The whole point of joining this network to see the exclusive listing is moot to begin with. Like to me, it looks like it's more of a play for market share of a listing syndication, and honestly, against the MLS. Like they're vying to almost like replace the MLS as best they can, right?
They're definitely diminishing the power of the MLS.
Yeah.
The pitch to the seller is you get to test a crazy high price.
For the seller, the pitch, yeah.
And no one knows about it. The pitch to the buyer is, ooh, we have this super secret network that only us know about these exclusives. But the reality is you can download the Compass app and see the exclusives. And I've done this a few times just to see how many there are, and there's usually 2 or 3, right? Like when Compass called me and wanted to recruit me to have the whole brokerage become Compass. This is like 2 months ago. In real time, I pulled up the Compass app and on their advice so I could see how many exclusives do you really have in Boulder? And the answer was like 2. And none of them were really that sexy of houses. Like, I wouldn't have picked up the phone and called my clients about either of them. But now it creates an additional burden on us to regularly check the Compass app to see if there are exclusives that work for our client. And if there are, pick up the phone and call the listing agent and get in there to go see the property. It's a mess, and it's mostly smoke and mirrors for marketing. And I guess Robert, the CEO, has a point that sellers should have a choice in how their homes are marketed. But I don't think they're being well educated on how these homes, like what these marketing channels mean. Because I would think that having the most number of buyers have seen, like, the Compass is not the only game in town. There's Remax, there's Coldwell Banker, there's agents that are independent. Our little boutique brokerage has been here since 2013. Don't you want potential buyers to see the listing? I mean, exclusivity has value, but not all the time. And you open the door to some liability with shenanigans. To say like sellers have a choice how their homes are marketed.
I have a feeling that the regulation and the whole MLS deal and how it's been put together is for a reason. And there's some fair housing reasoning behind it too. And it kind of just ignores a lot of that. So with that,
let's jump into our actual sales of the week, since we've now gotten a little afield. And let's start with 440 Christmas Tree. And this property had been on the market a long time. It had originally been marketed in September of last year at 4.75, and it just sold for 4.1. That's 160 days before it got an offer, 188 days before it finally closed. Of course, this price point deals are typically cash, but this one was not. It was listed as conventional fixed mortgage, and there was a cash concession, $22,000 for something or other. The location is one of the best spots in all of Boulder. We have clients that are practically next door, and actually clients that we were one of the first, or one of the early users of our video remote buying system with gimbaled cameras and really detailed videos where we point out pros and cons. It was right practically next door to this house. Decent sized lot for the location, 18,000 square feet, almost 19,000. It's a 5,000 square foot house with a reasonable number of beds and baths for this price point, reasonable square footage, and this location is extremely premium. You are steps away from Chautauqua. There is some potential for exposure from road noise as you get in certain spots along that hillside. You might get exposure to traffic. Where this is, right?
Yeah.
Up against the foothills as you move west of 6th Street, it gets really steep. But because of the topography, some of these houses get exposure to potential traffic noise from Flagstaff, which in recent years has started to include some loud motorcycles. And so that is a due diligence item for this location, is to make sure you sound tested it. But killer flat iron views, at least from a drone. And probably from the house itself. House was built in the 50s and updated. I would call it quirky and interesting from a design perspective. Really looks classy. I actually am a fan of these old types of fixtures, or at least the old colored fixtures. But it's totally bespoke, turnkey, ready to go, premium location.
I think it's great. Yeah,
great house. I think some of the staging is generic and not appropriate, like these bunny things and that dumb cow. Like, this is from Stagers R Us.
I was going to bring up that cow. Yep.
If your stager is using this, I would ask that you pay the money for professional staging that doesn't show up in mid-market and entry-level houses, because that cow photo has been that jaded cow and those bunnies. We've seen that so many times, and you're spending so much money on staging. I would demand better from your stager. But great 2-story house. Shake shingle is a little fire prone, but
it looks good. And I know looks aren't everything, but the shake shingle and the flagstone trim around the windows looks good.
Yeah, it's cool. It's a cool house. And I would not call it ultra luxury. You're sort of approaching that. I think ultra is probably above 5 at this point, but a nice luxury home in a fantastic spot, but did take a while to sell. So, Okay, Hamish, tell us about 819 Gapter Road. This is your choice.
Yeah, well, 819 Gapter Road. The way that I searched Oz is I put in Boulder, and then I went to the map, and I was like, what are some areas that we haven't necessarily talked about too much? Is this the Westview neighborhood? How do you...
No, it's not Westview. Westview is off of Arapahoe.
Oh, Westview is just up there. No. Yeah, okay, we're still on
Westview is further. So this is just east of the golf course, okay? It's right off of Gapter and Cherryville, and the Boulder Creek is right there. Awesome location, right? This is a location where literally I love running on these roads, and the open space trails are right there, and some of these back to the creek.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this one does. It's almost like a little hobby farm of a thought, and I really did think this was up against Westview, so that's super on me. But this corridor or kind of row of homes along Cherryvale and Gapter have started. There's a bit of movement this year in quite a few of them. So this is the third one that I've seen in this neighborhood actually sell recently. And like you said, good location. It's next to the Bobolink Trail, a few little schools, and the golf course or nearby it. It's also flood zone prone, to my understanding, as this whole area is kind of in a neat little valley. And I haven't actually checked it for the flood zone, so I'll do that. Oz, what do you have to say about it?
I took clients to see this house twice, and I loved it. I think that the lower level wing was not particularly useful for our buyer. That's what caused them to lose interest in it. But I thought it was a fantastic house, reasonable size, just over 4,000 square feet, almost a full acre of land. And if you're going to get something in the 100-year flood, which this is in the 100-year flood, or even the high hazard zone, you really should get some significant trade-offs for it. And this is literally, you have a beautiful creek, a riparian corridor, and what feels like open space directly past it. And I think it actually is open space before you hit the golf course. So it just feels spectacular. It feels so rural and private. The tricky part is because it's the flood zone, it's going to be expensive and difficult to do modifications, right? To do permitted additions, remodels. You're going to run out of clearance with your permits pretty quickly because of the restrictions of the 100-year or worse flood. I think this house was a steal at 2.775. Originally, it had been marketed at 3.75 in January of last year, January 2015, and then they chased the price all the way down to 2.775.
Wow.
It's just, yes, there was some funkiness to the old house. There's some updates that are kind of funky, but workable. The back lot, like if you look in the photos with the horse, is that a real horse? If you look at the photos back there, there's a little barn-like building that had some deferred maintenance and needed some work, which might have been problematic given that it's in the floodplain, right? How are you going to get permitted work there? But even so, overall, I mean, it was worth taking the risk on the 100-year flood. I would have bought this house. I'm sad my client didn't buy it. Our client didn't buy it, but it just wasn't the right house for them. And our hunt will continue.
No, I'll say too, it's in the conveyance zone, the 100-year, and then there's a very slight part of the property that is in the high hazard. I don't know how the conveyance rolls into things. I imagine that's like almost worse than the 100-year. It's a layer on the floodplain.
Where the structure is relative to those zones. Mm-hmm. And then you need to think about what your flood insurance and mitigation plan is in the event of a serious water. Like, what's your plan? Because it's really close to the water. So it does, it's not for completely risk-averse people. But anytime you're in, even the 500-year flood, you need to be having these conversations about what does that actually mean? What are the impacts to you? Like the 500-year flood doesn't require you to get flood insurance. It doesn't have any impact on permitting that I know of, at least today. But it's also politically determined, could move over time. This thing backs to a conveyance zone. You also should be talking about what's happening at CU South, because in theory, CU South could do something to remove this property from the flood zone. There's like a multi-100-page analysis, and one of the things we started to look at was trying to get whether this would benefit. It won't get worse, when all the floodplain work is done. But it could get better. It could remove it from the floodplain. So, yes, you're taking some risk, but I think that it's risk that is probably well managed with appropriate trade-offs. I'm again sad my client did. I would have bought this house, right?
Yeah.
If we were in the right spot and time, especially at 2.775, this is a great deal on this house.
Yeah. Man, I'm
also, all the bedrooms
the
are
location so wrong. Yeah.
All the bedrooms are on the main, right? Like this is a big rambling ranch, and there's so many older buyers that have mobility issues or might have mobility issues that benefit from mostly single-story layout. It wasn't all single-story though. That was what was problematic, was the stairs. There were quite a bit of stairs that we had to think about, and that didn't push us toward moving to write an offer.
Yeah. But no, cool one.
And that buyer's still in the hunt, by the way. So if you have a big ranch, 1 story, not on the floodplain, prefer no basement, that would have been probably a deal. Although that lot was really big for the landscaping, and the maintenance of the lot was a lot for this person. Well, the lot was a lot for this person to think about.
It was big lots.
We prefer smaller lots. Yeah.
Yeah. That kind of, because that's 0.97 acres. Say the zoning and everything changes. Can you imagine some beautiful condos there that overlook the open space and have views of the mountains? Like, pretty cool.
It's in the floodplain. You can't develop.
You just have the garage on the first floor. Yeah, yeah.
And for a long time, that area is unincorporated Boulder County, so subject to different zoning. But the Boulder Valley Comp Plan covers both. Let me see. Look at the public record really quick. Is it unincorporated Boulder County?
Oh shoot! I already ended the.
No, I need to be in a different map. It doesn't really matter. But there's almost zero chance that the neighbors are going to tolerate an apartment building there. But just go. But you have a valid point for apartment buildings, because if you just go to the north, you have giant apartment buildings on the other end of the street there. So 100% there's that risk. It just doesn't seem very likely. Among all these high-end houses, that one of the neighbors,
it would be absurd to see. Yeah, but with what we're seeing in kind of the tea leaves.
But if they throw out zoning and you're in neighborhood 1 or 2, this would probably be neighborhood 1, but that would still allow all sorts of, like a triplex. Yeah, I don't know. A small apartment building. Okay, let's move on. 2917 13th Street. Oh, well, let me mention, if you are interested in all that talk about the Boulder Valley Comp Plan, our newsletter covered it in a lot of detail. And last week's podcast also covered it in some detail. So it's worth checking that out if you're trying to understand what the likely future of Boulder will be under the new zoning that is almost certain to pass, given the lack of public awareness or protest over it. All right, 2917 13th Street. This is in Washington Village. Washington Village was originally developed as a co-housing project, but Jim Leach, I don't know how it ended up not co-housing. It does have some community spaces still. So if you flip through the photos, this is the old Washington School. It took a long time to develop. Jim Leach and Wonderland were the largest co-housing developers, I think, in the country. Co-housing is a very unique type of property with some shared spaces, like a shared common area, shared it had workshop rooms and other things that were common areas, but you still had your own private space. So that's and often it's organized around a common theme, right? And I think at the time the community that he was really pitching was part of the Shambhala spiritual community here in Boulder. There were quite a few of those people that were part of the planning process and part of the envisioning of what shared core ideas were part of the co-housing, but it no longer is co-housing. We've sold a property here not that long ago, and our clients made it really clear to us it's not co-housing anymore. So I'd want to make that clear, but that's where its roots are. And this is one of the few standalone single-family houses in the development. There's a bunch of condos, and there's a couple of townhomes, and then there's, I think, a couple of these single-family houses. This one...
not many, yeah.
4-bedroom, 4-bath, good square footage, 4,000 square feet, and built in 2013. I don't know if this is the one that has a hidden trap, like a secret safe room. One of them does. That blew my mind when I saw it a few years ago. I think this is the one that did, but probably don't want that revealed on a podcast. Anyway, it was listed at 2.5 a year ago in May, and they chased the market down. It eventually sold for 1,975. So you're looking at over $500,000, a little over $500,000 in discount from what they thought they were going to sell it for. And it did sell for cash, and it just closed a couple days ago. Overall, I think this is a great community. It's in a really nice spot. This one has its own garage, and you're central to so much for just under $2 million, which is $480 a square. A very nice and attractive, reasonably sized property that was built not that long ago. The HOA at $950 a month feels a little steep, but keep in mind that probably includes your hazard insurance, and you're going to get some amenities from the community. I think that's probably what drove this price so much lower, is it's hard to sell HOAs with single-family detached houses, right? It takes people a while it's a much smaller buyer pool. You have somebody who doesn't want to do any yard maintenance, right? They just want to live here, write their $950 a month check, and be done, and let somebody else deal with all the exterior maintenance. And that's effectively what this is.
Yeah. This I remember right. Well, this particular property too is inboard enough from Broadway. You're not going to get that bad of traffic noise. You've got a nice little setback. I really like actually the way the house is positioned on the lot. And then that old elementary school, Sophie had an attached listing in there, and I remember shooting video for it. There's a library. There's like a arts and crafts. I don't remember if it's like a 3D printing thing, but they're doing something more modernized there too. And then there's shared kitchen, all sorts of stuff. So, it's totally up to you as an individual how much you plan to utilize what's included with like the HOA. But it's not nothing.
$950 a month is expensive as far as HOAs go, especially if you don't get any value from it, right? You're looking at almost $12,000 a year, and HOA that pays for a lot of maintenance. So that's the tricky part with this type of property type. But it is a lovely community. It is very central. It is newer construction. This is well designed. I've always liked Washington Village, and I think it would be cool to own one of the condos in the historic school. In particular.
Yeah.
We did have clients that sold here, and I will mention that privacy was one of the challenges. And that is something, if you're thinking about buying, that you would probably want to pay some attention to make sure you feel comfortable with the privacy available to you at this development. Okay, let's talk about our next one. 2525 Balsam Drive. And this is in that location I like to call the Alpine Balsam Panorama Peninsula. I think it has, it depends on the subdivision. This one is Panorama View. There's a couple of them. But you're looking at larger than typical lots, and the ones on the outside of the perch have killer views, but not all of them. I sold a house on Panorama, this is probably 12 years ago, and what astounded me about the property was it had amazing views that were so clearly, the house was designed around jaw-dropping views, and that house has exploded in value. My client's extremely happy. Even though they couldn't go up because there is a design review committee that's part of this, it's part of the covenants that are the CC&Rs that are in the title work. I don't know if anybody's enforcing that, by the way, but it's there. And the neighbor behind them made it clear that he was going to enforce if they tried to go up and block his view. So blocking the view is not something that they could do, but the house still has exploded in value. It's still one of the best spots in all of Boulder. But really, it's if you have the view. And mostly it's the outside of the circle that has the view. The ones on the inside, not so much. Some of them, but not always. And so understanding that nuance is really important to getting your head around valuation. This particular house, 2525 Balsam, built in 1991. I don't know what to say about its architecture other than, maybe it's the paint. If it was white... it's like the lack of contrast between the roof color and the stucco or the ephes on the outside. Could you fall in love with this house as it stands? My guess is probably not. I think that people are going to do a ton of work on this thing. The bones, because they're from the 1990s, probably will support a complete remodel, maybe an addition. and you do get some pretty nice views. You do not get the Flatiron views. You get views to the north, which is right over Trout, and it's right over Trout Farm.
And those are good. Those are pretty sweet. Yeah.
I mean, the views to
They're
the
not
north
flat
are okay.
irons, but they're nice. Yeah.
You also are going to hear some sounds from Trout Farm, the parking lot from Trout Farm, that sort of stuff. So it's not like the perfect location, but you're under $2 million for this particular perch. That's pretty good for a home that's going to almost certainly get a lot of remodeling. It would shock me if it doesn't. But you can see some of the views from some of the photos. You can also see the roof line, the roof shadows or the roofs of Trout Farm from your deck, right? What you're seeing is mostly Trout Farm. I think, I have a hard time imagining a situation where I would be gung-ho and encouraging my buyer to jump all over this because I think that Trout Farm thing could hurt them in the long run, but it's sold fast.
I have to ask, what is Trout Farm?
It's just a development.
Okay.
I don't know why maybe there was a trout farm there. It's just directly below it. Like if you're going on Folsom, Hamish, right? You're heading north on Folsom.
No, because we've sold a condo in there, right?
Oh, we did. We had a listing there. Yeah. This is. I thought that was before your time. But yeah.
No, I was I think day one. Wow, that is right there. I'm learning geography of Boulder today so much. You're right. You will get noise.
You know all this geography. Anyway.
I've shown a home on Balsam Drive. And we sold a condo on Trout Farm, and I never connected that they were maybe 1,000 feet from each other.
Yeah, at most.
Yeah.
I mean, I still think it's a cool spot. I just don't know if my ultimate litmus test is would I buy it? I don't know if I'd want to have a deck overlooking Trout Farm. That might not be okay because I think you'd hear noise from down there, and it would probably bug me. And the views aren't that great, and I'd always be jealous of my clients around the corner that have this, killer view of the flat irons. Right? You've got not a great, at least you're not inboard on the north side. Although some of the ones inboard might have a view to the south. So, what shocked me about my client's house is that the one right next door has no view. And so it's lot by lot, and I think the view quality in this particular one is not particularly great, but the price is right? Only 1.815. It had originally been listed coming soon at 1.85, and then it sold for 1.815. And no, strike that. Hold on a second. It had been on the market a long time, this house. It was originally on the market in December of 2023 for 2.35, and then they chased it. So I'm looking at the old MLS now, and it's, they chased it. They cut the price in 2024 to 2.3, and then to 1.975. And then at one point they had it down, this is May of 2024, as low as 1.795. And then the listing was withdrawn and expired. And then nothing happened from October 2024. So this is years ago. Maybe it was rented, who knows. It was back on the market this February at 1.85. And very quickly somebody locked it down and it sold for 1.815. But what's weird is that the list price is listed as 1.815, but the real list price was not that. The real list price, there's a database error. The real list price was 1.85. So this did not sell at full list. It sold for a discount from list.
It's a very confusing
a $65,000 discount from list. So this is why you have to really look into these listing histories and ask yourself, what is the narrative here? And in this particular case, there's they literally, the day of closing, 2 days before close. The day of closing, they changed the list price to 1.815 and then marked it as sold at 1.815. So this is shenanigans. Maybe this agent doesn't know how the MLS. Maybe they screwed up the data fields. Let's give them the benefit of the doubt, and that's what the deal is.
It doesn't make our job any easier. Yeah,
it was actually listed at 1.850. So you're looking at $35,000 below list. Okay, let's hit our last one, Hamish. Our last sale of the week, and now we're gonna go down market a little bit to the entry point into Martin Acres. To the acres. And I have tracked Martin Acres for a long time. $750 is sort of the going rate for a basic ranch. And that's one. This is 33rd Street is a fantastic street. It's one of the quietest streets in Martin Acres because it's very central to the neighborhood. So you are about as far away as you can get from Broadway or US 36. and it doesn't get a lot of traffic on that street. This particular house is a standard 3-1, 1,040 square feet. It's like that, you know, there are many rifles, but this one is mine. There are many 1,040 square foot, 3-bed, 1-bath ranches. This one has one deficit. It doesn't have a proper garage. It had a carport. So you could argue that might drop the price a little bit, but it was listed at $729 and it sold for $750. So it sold for $20,000 over list. It did sell for cash, and there was a small concession, a couple $1,000 for something or other. So a cash buyer took it because it sold for $20,000 over, $21,000 over. My guess is there was multiple offers. On the plus side, it had vaulted ceilings. Not all of them have vaulted ceilings, so really nice vaulted ceilings. The laundry had been brought into the kitchen, but the cabinetry and the kitchen was 1950s original.
I mean, that's
what it looked like in 1955. I suspect the stove has been replaced. Certainly the fridge has been replaced, and it didn't originally have a dishwasher. They took out a cabinet to put the dishwasher in, but the countertops look like 1955. Windows have been replaced. Property has been painted gray to give it a more modern look. You know, black window trim, newer windows, of course, and then the French doors to the outside. That's a nice improvement. So it has some nice improvements, but I still think $750 was actually market value. They priced it low probably to get it sold really fast, which is what happened here to a cash buyer. So successful strategy. I do like the staging and like the color match between the couch and the paint. Like here you see not that ugly couch, right? You see staging or the seller's possessions that look right in this house. And don't look like it came from Stagers R Us. And this paint codes. So this is what I want to show. Sorry, I'm gonna wrap up, Hamish. Like this is what, like that's that line from. No. It's that line from Idiocracy. Like this is what plants crave. Like this is what buyers crave. Okay, they want white out inside, flat finish, not orange peel, black trim, dark exterior, even though it's going to suck in the summer, and vaulted ceilings, quietest street in Martin Acres. A small is beautiful kind of house. This works for so many different types of buyers, and the listing agent, in my opinion, underpriced it, and it sold very, very quickly. 3 weeks total on market, bidding war and under contract within probably the first 24 hours. Days to offer says 4, but you have 2 business days to mark that. So I would say done in the first weekend. You know, dust your hands off. It's over, and that's what happened here. And this is a qualifying house. Oh, it's not a qualifying house for the Martin Acres Index because it's a carport, not a garage. But otherwise, fits all the criteria.
My read? You want to?
Your read. I want your read. That was my spiel. What's your read?
Yeah. I think if you, unfortunately, right, buyers also crave, like, finished, sexy kitchens. But for me personally, the way they did the updates, like vaulting a ceiling, opening up the floor plan, and newer windows has more value. Like I can live in a old outdated kitchen, like the functionality of it's borderline the same, but edits to the floor plan and those kinds of updates I think are a little bit of a harder chew for me as a buyer and a homeowner. So it's like they almost did the hardest parts in my mind as somebody who's never remodeled a kitchen, and you know, kind of left that for somebody else to pick up. Like I like the open floor plan. I think that carport would be, again, no experience, but I think it'd be fairly straightforward to enclose, you know.
I think you've got a very valid point. And I look at the open floor plan between the living area, the dining area, and the kitchen, and the vaulted ceilings. I don't know when it was done. I don't know if it was done with a permit. I've only seen one other house like this that was probably done without a permit and was roasting hot in the summer because there was no insulation.
It's a very real thing.
But that open floor plan, and then you look at the kitchen, you're like, okay, the kitchen sucks, but it's like tiny. You could tear that out in a weekend and put in IKEA cabinets, and it'll look amazing.
And you do have experience, so you're not talking out like I am. Yeah.
I mean, that's a super easy remodel. Like, this is something you could do yourself as a homeowner. And IKEA actually makes really nice, high-quality stuff at the price point, right? If you want to spend $200,000 on cabinets, you can. But you could get some very functional cabinets for this house and probably keep it under $20,000, all in with new appliances. Maybe $25,000 with new appliances. and doing your own labor. The process for assembling the cabinets is easy. They hang easy on the walls. You've got a stove and a fridge, and you probably can keep the dishwasher. So
yeah,
that's the only real deficit. The carport, okay, not great, but you could put in like a studio shed in the back or something like that. Oh, there is a shed, so you can put your bikes in the shed.
What is it, like the backyard awning kind of deal? That's sweet to see too. You've got kind of like the patio, the
covered patio.
Losing words. Yeah, covered patio.
Yeah,
thank you.
Yeah, it's not an awning. Yeah, it's a covered nice patio. I mean, it's a great house. I would buy this house all day long, and it would rent like wildfire. Mm-hmm. And we probably should start looking for one, because I would buy this one, Hamish, as part of my investment portfolio. If you have a listing on 33rd, 34th, or 35th
Shameless
self-promo. Like this, call me, because I would buy this house. It's a no-brainer. The lot itself is worth probably $700,000, and you just got a valuation of $50,000 on the house.
And you know the neighborhood. You know some of the neighbors' lots.
I happen to know the neighbors very well.
Well, good pick. Yeah, that one's it's always good seeing the acres, and I'm going to start calling them the acres, because I think that sounds country club. I live in the acres.
It sounds better than Martian Acres, which is what people used to call it, because it was probably the most eclectic neighborhood in Boulder, because it was the most affordable, one of the most affordable neighborhoods. Baseline, also very affordable. And also one of the safest investments in Boulder. Like, it may not turn into a $1.5 million house, but the dirt is worth a lot more, especially with the Boulder Valley Comp Plan coming into play, and this could be a duplex or a triplex in 10 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, value sticks.
I just noticed that this was a flip. 80 South 33rd Street was acquired by the seller for only $505 in December, which is an absolute steal on this house. Like, absolute steal on this house. And my guess is, given this is what buyers want with the colors and the work done on the house, maybe spent $50,000 to $100,000 and flipped it for $150,000 above that price. So $150,000 in profit minus commissions. Let's call it $100,000 in profit for 3 months worth of work. Like, closed just right before Christmas.
Yeah.
And immediately got to work January and February, on the market in March. 2 months worth of work and made $150,000, put that in their pocket. That's a classic flipper maneuver. And flip quality often also hides lots of things, so we don't advise flips. But there you go. That's what the market rewarded the flipper with. So we'll leave it at that.
News time.
Well, time to talk
Shameless.
about the news. Oh, shameless self-promote. I already shamelessly self-promoted myself, but let's self-promote. Let's self-promote one of our clients, and let's talk about our buyers who are hunting in Louisville. They are looking for 1.2 to 1.6, a big family house, cul-de-sac, close to bike paths, turnkey, updated kitchen, nice backyard. They're comfortable in that zone. We've turned down a few of the listings that the ENL team have had on the market recently. We've not jumped on those. For one reason or another, we're still hunting, but they're serious buyers, and we're getting closer to finding the ideal scenario. I think they would be happiest with a 3-car garage. They're rafters, and they want to park a raft in the garage. It's important, and if they can easily access the 2 other garage spaces with cars, that would work for them. So if you have that type of house and you would be interested in exploring a possible sale to one of House Einstein's clients, visit us at houseeinstein.com. You'll see my contact information there. I do answer the phone, but if you happen to get voicemail, leave a message. I will call you back, and we'll have this conversation. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. No harm, no foul. But I promise you we'll treat you with ethics and integrity and good communication. And these buyers are lovely people that have lived in the community for years. So they're not investors. We're not trying to steal the house. They'll pay fair market value for the right house.
Yeah. Good little shameless self-promo there.
All right, Hamish, let's hit the news. I think the first 2 items we can cover pretty high level. Do you want to start?
And talk about the Iran war?
Well, don't you feel like you've been following this? Don't you have something to say? Are you just not going to...
I've got my war map over here, and I've got the U.S. troops and the Iranian. But, no, I talked to my mom a little bit, because we talked about New Zealand and stuff, and We didn't brush on the subject that much, but she was saying, I mean, fuel's been expensive. I think it's up even more there. And then here too, I think it was $40 to fill up the Hyundai, which, how out of touch I'm talking about gas prices when there's human life being lost. So, yeah, not cool to see. I don't think in my lifetime I've genuinely been in a recession. Sure, the 2008 crash, but other than that, I don't think an actual recession I've been in. So from what I'm seeing as far as indicators and things, I'm not necessarily excited about it. Nor am I experienced in navigating a recession. So, very uncertain times. There's nothing that really that I can hear that I'll necessarily believe about it. I'm just on the reports about it's ending last week. We've won. We're done. Here are our reasons. A lot of contradictions. So I don't know. I'm saving my doubloons and just trying to be stable. Yeah. That's me.
Yeah. It's week 4. I feel like we have to mention it. We are a country at war. We are at war with Iran. Ignoring this would be absurd. And also, we're not experts in Iran or global economics, although I pay a lot of attention to it. And I think the market's right in pricing in a recession. And the likelihood of that is increasing every day. And you're also right in pointing out that the cost in human lives is also very significant and cannot be ignored, and matters more than economics in many ways. But where people feel it is in this country is largely going to be in a recession that is likely coming, and high gas prices. And if there is a recession, well, that probably will drive interest rates probably lower. But I don't know if that's true anymore because of how the bond markets are pricing in U.S. debt. It may be challenging for the U.S. to move the needle to a lower rate environment, but that's where likely we will go if we are in recession, which in theory should drop mortgage rates lower, which in theory should benefit the housing market.
Good points. Yeah.
But that feels like blood money, right? Like we're looking at a really horrific situation unfolding, and I think we'll know in 2 to 3 weeks whether the U.S. actually pulls out entirely or if we're going to have troops on the ground, because it looks like we're rushing troops to the region while we're saying what we're doing is pulling out in 2 to 3 weeks. Which one is it? I really hope the Iranians negotiate and that we come to a peaceful resolution and end this conflict for the rest of the world. Artemis is in the news. It just launched yesterday. I'm not sure if you watched it. Hamish, did you?
No, I missed it, man. I was just in another place.
Oh, okay. Well, curious what place you were in, but my lovely wife called me to the room and we watched it together. And really special to know we're going back to the moon. And also the reason it's coming up in the news, real estate related, is their bathroom's not working, which is classic, right? Brand new, billions of dollars invested, and yet the toilet doesn't work. It's not just your high-end home buyers that suffer from plumbing failures. It happens to everybody. It doesn't matter how much money you spent. There are always teething issues with every piece of property. Expect it, and do your best to inspect and plan ahead for those unexpected plumbing issues.
It's a good point. I like the tie into real estate. That's pretty pro. I'll say it's a nice. From what I've seen, it's been a pretty unifying moment. So it was cool to see it. I know a lot of people celebrated it. There's conspiracy theories. I'm just going to ignore those for now. And then I was taking Spanish lessons and had a showing, and I completely spaced it.
What conspiracy theory? The moon landing?
We've been living on the moon all along, and it's that one.
Keep going. What else? That there are moon people up there?
Yeah, there's that's where JFK is. The Pope, they're up there. MJ, Tupac, they've got a moon base.
All right, we'll let it go. All right, Louisville is under contract to buy a $13 million building at 101 South Taylor Avenue. It's a 56,000 square foot commercial building on 8 acres in the tech center. And the price tag's $13 million. And the reason I brought this up as news is because it's such in contrast to how the City of Boulder Council have behaved with acquisitions, where they literally have bought it without any public process, without any real financing provision, have said, we've got to have it because we've got to protect it from development. And that's how Alpine Balsam was acquired, the project that's now in like mid-phase. You can see the building, the core and shell is up, it's happening. But the city ended up incurring massive amounts of cost related to asbestos mitigation. It was really expensive. They did not plan for that. They went in guns blazing. They did not ask the public opinion, and they stuck the voters with the bill. And here we have Louisville, which is clearly better managed, with a very different process. So they voted unanimously on March 3rd to enter into the purchase agreement, putting down a deposit of $150,000 with the condition the city can terminate the contract without forfeiting that money within a 90-day window. And now, during those 90 days, what are they doing? They're going to ask the community about the purchase, and if there is enough support to move forward, how it envisions the property could be used. They will ask the community. They think it's going to end up being it's going to be used for city offices, which currently are being leased, and the current city hall at 749 Main Street, which is built in 1980, could be potentially at the end of its life cycle. There's a value of $2 to $3 million they're putting on that, so maybe that they could sell it. Who knows? But I like that the city staff are actually giving the public an out, and their contract wasn't ironclad and stuck the voters with it. So I just wanted to highlight that. I'm not sure it makes a lot of sense, by the way, for Louisville to have that much space for offices, but I do appreciate their approach and just want to note how different it is compared to the City of Boulder.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a little bit more communicative, isn't it? A little bit. It's more. I think they should keep that building that's downtown, because I mean, to me at least, it's very neat to have a city building kind of entrenched in like the downtown flavor area. I'm not sure, all the rest here nor there, but yeah, props to Louisville. I really do like Louisville.
Louisville is a well-managed city, and it's safe. It has a great historic downtown. I agree with you that it's nice to see some city offices and classic historic buildings downtown. There's a warmth, there's an authenticity, sort of a nod to history. And I will also add, where they're thinking about buying, there's a restaurant called John's. Have you been to John's Table?
Is it in that little area? There's a restaurant there?
It's really close. Yeah, it's called John's Table. Have you been there?
No, John?
John. AI recommended it to me because I had something in Superior, and then I had to go to Louisville, and I had like 2 hours to kill, so I went and had lunch there, and I worked from the restaurant. And I was pleasantly surprised. That fried chicken sandwich was incredible. Was so good. And so I think, it's an unexpected find. It's in this tech center, this industrial zone. But what a cool restaurant. Plenty of parking, plenty of space, close to a lot of office workers. And I just shout out, without any, this is unpaid promotion for John's Table. I really liked it as a surprise restaurant find if you happen to be in or near Louisville. It's not near downtown, okay? This is like the industrial zone. But it actually is worth a little zigzag to go check it out.
It's cool. It's cool for you to mention this whole little area, because I used to lifeguard in Louisville. And when I started, this industrial block hadn't been developed at all. And since I left, I've always just thought of it as continually being built, but it's built out now. There's used to go climbing. The spot is actually right across from John's Table. It looks like they've got an infinitus pie. This whole area is very built out now. Cool
Spots
to see.
There. Yeah, it's a cool spot.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to carve-outs and wrap up this puppy. Hamish, what do you think?
Let's do it. Shall I?
Yeah, please. Lead the way.
Shoot. I have 2 friends and roommates. One of them has already left, and the other one has given me his dates for departure this year. So it's I think the classic young young guy buy a home, rent it out to his friends, help cover the cost of the mortgage strategy is what I've been up to. And this is like, I guess, I'm leaving the comfort of living with friends and people I know, and I'm now staring down the barrel of meeting strangers, which is a little daunting. And it's
Especially
nice to have like
if you frame it like that, like you're framing it so negatively.
Yeah, you met your wife in a roommate situation, so I'm just like hanging on to that one. But yeah, no, I'm a little daunted, but it's great. I have a couple months to kind of like anticipate and prepare for it. I've been running my like budget stress testing and everything. I'm gonna be fine. I'm so tempted to just live in this house, just me. I'm very tempted. I'm not going to, I don't think. But I will take a little bit of time to do a bit of a renovation. I just want to add, new carpets to the rooms, repaint it. I'd love to do like a little kitchenette, but that would involve jacking up the slab in the basement and adding drainage and all sorts of things. But yeah, it's kind of a little bit of a turning point for me. It's going to be interesting. We'll see. Maybe I can just rush into a relationship and, work on that instead, and I don't have to worry about roommates ever again. We'll see.
I mean, why don't you sell it and move into Boulder?
This is a bad time to be selling right now for me personally. I don't know about you. I like this mindset of never sell. And, I just incurred a bit of debt to put the solar panels on. I like the idea, though, Oz. I'm gonna be here for a hot minute. Yeah.
How about renting it out? Does it cover? Can you cover your carrying costs renting it out?
I wouldn't want to. Honestly, I like being here.
I mean, you could rent the apartment above the office. It's available. I'll give you a big discount.
It's about to like. Nothing ever bad happens when you commingle your employer with your living situation.
You don't want to live above the company store? Think about the possibilities.
Yeah. Can you pay me in company chips?
Okay. Maybe year one, I could see that fear. But year 4, are you still worried about this?
Not really. I've got a cat. You want my uncut cat to live in the apartment?
I would trust you with your cat.
Oh man,
Mr. Balls is welcome.
He is so good. But no, I think doing okay for now. It's interesting. I'll keep y'all posted.
All right.
Yeah.
Do you want to give a pitch for the type of roommate you're looking for and how much rent you're going to charge?
I will do it appropriately and professionally. I am looking for a young professional who is clean and enjoys socializing and wouldn't mind being friends with their landlord. And for rent, I'm thinking I'm either going to do utilities included, probably for like $1,350, or $1,200 plus utilities. And it is 2 bedrooms. One bedroom is like 15 by 20 feet, so basically a living room. And then the other bedroom, I'd say you're pretty typical, like 15 by 10 feet. Both of them have walk-in closets, and then you get a full bath as well. But you cannot use the bathtub for bathing in because the flippers did not install an overflow drain. So it's a shower bath, and that's what you get.
Flippers.
Okay. Flippers, yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
All right.
So it's a screaming deal. You get a shared kitchen, you get laundry and everything included. You get a backyard and off-street parking if you want it. But for now, I'm taking all the off-street parking.
Okay. All right. Excellent.
Thank you.
Let me jump to my Carveout. And
Please.
Back in October, I injured my ankle. So that's October, November, December, January, February, March, April, 6 months ago. And I have been struggling with it, hoping it would get better. It has not gotten better, so I finally started seeing a PT and doing all sorts of exercises, working on it, and I've not been running very much at all, which is very depressing, but it's finally getting better, and I'm excited about that. I'm trying to stay positive about this because it's like you don't value something until you lose that mobility or what you had, especially something that you just feel like is every day, like your hands or your feet or your ability to balance, your ability to drive yourself. And suddenly when it gets damaged, it really shocks you, right? And so it's been kind of a recovery psychologically, but I'm glad I'm on the road to actual recovery. The last week, I've been waking up without a lot of ankle pain, which has been really nice. I'm going to see the PT again tomorrow. It's sort of a torture sesh with the PT. I'm like, oh man, I got to like steel myself for like being stabbed with dry needles. And
mentally prepare.
He's really good. He really gets in there, and it definitely feels immediately better afterward. And I'm doing the exercises, but I think it takes like the right mindset to commit to this. The number of eccentric heel drops, and every night before I go to bed, I do, he calls it nerve flossing. And it just makes you value mobility and what you got. And the amount of time it takes to heal as you get older is also kind of frustrating. It's like, wow, this is taking a really long time. But also there's many things you can do, right? Like, and when you're young, when you're your age, things just heal by themselves, it seems. Like you don't really do anything. They just heal. And as you get older, like PT, actual working the muscles and working the joints and doing the exercises makes a big difference. So grateful to have those resources here in Boulder, because this PT is a world-class runner themselves. And
this is the foot inserts guy too, yeah?
Yeah.
Yep. Sorry.
So I'm not going to mention their name. I don't think that's appropriate, but I do think that we're lucky we live in a community with so many resources, with people that are aimed not just to get you mobile, but to get you like back in the game of whatever athletics you were into, because there are world-class athletes who are also physical body workers here in our community, and it's such an underrated resource. But when you know, right? If you're moving to this community and you are an athlete of any kind, even an older athlete that just is out there cycling for fun or hiking for fun, knowing the quality of the healthcare, it's not, it's concierge healthcare. You're going to pay for it, but it is so available here, and it's such a nice resource to have. Another hidden benefit for living here in Boulder.
Yeah. I completely agree. Like, I heal quicker relative to you, but teenagers, dude, they can do anything. And they're fine. And it really bothers me. Like I need to stretch. I have like a stretch routine. And one thing, like a morning routine too, like I really need to start putting together a morning fitness and mobility routine. And just every morning, robo mode, autopilot, just do my like push-ups and stretches and just wake up my body. Yeah. With you.
Okay, well, I think this has been a fantastic podcast, Hamish. It's time to bid adieu or farewell to our dear listeners and viewers, whoever's joined us today. As always, we so deeply appreciate you sharing your attention, and the feedback and comments I keep getting from the podcast are growing, and the number of new clients we've gotten from it too. We so appreciate you. If you are interested in becoming a client of the House Einstein brokerage, which sponsors this podcast, you can find us at houseeinstein.com. On that website, you can also sign up for our newsletter. And you can find us also on all sorts of other social media: YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, X, Blue Sky, LinkedIn. I'm occasionally posting personal stuff on TikTok. I've heard that might be bad, but I've started to post personal stuff on TikTok. You can always visit us at houseeinstein.com if you want to reach us to talk about your real estate situation. We are here for you. Thanks again for joining us today, and we look forward to catching you next time.
Take care.